This is the best student in the school, the smartest. While the popular kids are with all the girls, Jay is sharpening his brain. But even for those who only study, there are girls interested in them. This girl can't take her eyes off the student council president. One day, the guy who only studies and never gets into fights showed up at school hurt. Everyone was surprised. Nobody in the school could imagine the reason for it. Jay is a student who could become first in the national ranking. He does everything by the book. But one day, everything changed. The teacher introduced the new transfer student from the United States to the class. She is the school principal's granddaughter, so everyone must be nice to her. When the blonde girl saw Jay in the classroom, she could not hold back and kissed him right in front of everyone. That scene shocked everyone, especially the girl who always had feelings for Jay. Look at this. Even the principal was watching his granddaughter's first day of school through the window. The protagonist had no idea what was going on. He had never seen this girl before. But the girl, Shelley, just looked at the boy next to her and said, "You there, ordinary boy, I want your seat." Of course, the boy didn't refuse the polite request. Later, students who weren't even friends with Jay surrounded him, asking since when he had a 10 out of 10 girlfriend. The only sad person there was that girl, but to understand this, we have to go back a few days. This guy here is named Jay, and even though he lives near the school, he likes to ride his old bicycle. The reason is simple. School is boring, so at least a little adrenaline in the morning. On the way, everything is an obstacle, so Jay rides through it all as if he were waiting to be called by Red Bull. The workers get scared, and the couples tasting each other's lips get scared too. When he reaches the deadly slope, where even walking down is dangerous, Jay has no fear. He rides down at maximum speed, and at the bottom uses advanced maneuvers to break the bicycle. All the popular students at school saw this for the first time, and none of them were happy to see someone aura farming harder than them. Some liked it. Others decided they would teach this guy a lesson after school. Another school day began, and everyone around Jay was complaining about something. Jay focused only on his studies, paying no attention to his surroundings. While Jay reflected on how unmotivated he felt, Mia watched him nearby. Mia was surprised when her friend asked what she was thinking about. Her friend wanted to know if Mia had been studying hard for the upcoming exams. Smiling, Mia replied that she was studying a little now and then. Her friend advised Mia to dedicate more time unless she wanted to perform poorly on the tests. Her friend believed Mia should study, but not focus solely on it. Mia thought the student council president was someone who only studied and had no hobbies. However, Mia always defended him whenever anyone spoke poorly of him. Mia had nothing but praise for the president. Yet, in her eyes, Jay was an incredible person. That's when her friend realized Mia was in love with Jay. The boy in the black jacket and red hair was admired by all the girls. Minu was also very popular among the girls in the class. When Yuna noticed Minu's presence, she remarked that his arrival alone made everyone excited. As soon as Yuna made her comment, Minu insulted her, calling her grandma. Yuna didn't seem to enjoy the joke, even less so when Minu stuck out his tongue and made an unnecessary comment. This left Yuna quite irritated. Despite her friend asking her to stay calm, Yuna unleashed all the adjectives that came to mind. Even with her impulsiveness, an observer noticed that Yuna was beautiful even when angry. Dom Kang admired even the smallest movements Yuna made. Minu, however, thought his sister was overly temperamental and preferred to slip away quietly, pretending not to know her. Despite all the commotion, Jay remained focused on his studies. As Minu was leaving to escape his sister, he decided to greet Jay. Jay simply ignored Minu's greeting, but Minu quickly realized he was being ignored. Noticing that Minu wouldn't leave easily, Jay told him he was busy and asked him to state his purpose. Minu didn't miss the chance to invite Jay to join the team. He managed to get Jay's attention for a few moments, remarking that the downhill maneuver Jay had performed was amazing. Minu mentioned how surprised the team was to see Jay descend the slope with a single skid. They were even more surprised to discover that Jay was the president of the student council. Minu explained he had come specifically to ask if Jay wanted to join their group. Once again, Minu was ignored and received no response from Jay. Minu kept trying to get his attention without success. Yuna found it strange to see the two of them talking, as she didn't know they were friends. Mia, on the other hand, also wanted to know what they were discussing. Jay obviously wasn't interested, and simply wanted Minu to stop disrupting his studies. Minu couldn't believe that Jay truly had no interest at all. As he turned away, Minu muttered that it was fine and apologized for the interruption, grumbling that guys like Jay were irritating. Although Jay didn't pay much attention to what Minu said, he felt a slight interest in the topic. Hearing about bicycles reminded him of when he was 13 years old and received one. His uncle had given him the bike as a gift, mentioning that while studying was important, it was good to get some fresh air sometimes. He also commented that if Jay got better, they could go on bike trips together. After classes ended, everyone was leaving the school, chatting with their classmates. Friends Yuna and Mia were talking about how stressful it was to be a teenager. Yuna had always believed adolescence would be more romantic and memorable, but it felt the same every day. Mia thought Yuna shouldn't be so negative, reminding her that many adventures were still ahead. Yuna wished all that fun would come soon, as she was tired of school. Mia suggested thinking positively, assuring her they would get through it all during the holidays. Dom Kang suddenly appeared, asking if Yuna wanted to watch a zombie movie with him. Startled, Yuna screamed and asked him not to be so loud, deciding to punish him a little. She had already warned him not to show show up like that, as it was something a stalker would do. After the punishment, Dom Kang noticed Yuna knew how to punch very well. As soon as he recovered, he chased after her, eager to watch the movie on a 90-inch LED TV. Meanwhile, Jay was watching his classmates leave through the window while packing his school supplies. After preparing his backpack, ready to leave, he noticed Minu was behind him again. Minu explained he made a point to return while Jay wasn't studying. He quickly stated he just wanted a chance for Jay to decide if he truly didn't want to join the team. Minu mentioned there would be a race that night, and that a competitor was interested in challenging Jay. Jay, however, simply looked Minu in the eyes and said he hadn't even started riding yet. He asked Minu to stop bothering him and go play with his friends. Even so, Minu persisted, mentioning a guy in their group named TJ Kin. Minu relayed that TJ Kin had badmouthed Jay's bike, claiming it was just junk and nothing special. TJ Kin also commented that he hated seeing someone place so much importance on a bike's features. Minu added that TJ Kin had seen Jay riding around on that bike for a long time and wanted to challenge him to a race. The meeting place would be Green Park that same night. Although Jay didn't respond directly, his discomfort about the comments on his bike was visible. At night, in the mentioned park, there was a lot of noise as it was a popular leisure spot. Many cyclists were there, performing tricks and seeking relaxation. Several demonstrated that a bike could be used for more than just simple races. The tricks of the Zephyrus team drew particular attention, and many stopped to watch them. Minu was calm and focused when his friend June decided to play a joke. June pressed a cold can of energy drink against Minu's face, startling him. Satisfied, June told Minu to calm down and offered him the drink. After accepting the drink, Minu was sure Jay would really show up. Minu replied that there wasn't much to do but wait. June suggested that if Jay didn't show up, they could practice some races. Then June asked why Minu was so obsessed with Jay. Minu replied that he wasn't obsessed and asked June to speak more quietly, so no one got the wrong idea. June mentioned there was no need for a reason to ride a bike. After all, seeing how good Jay was, it was clear he'd been riding for a long time. June thought it would be more fun for Jay to ride with them than to keep going solo. Minu and June were calm when a group approached. The group asked Minu where the snob from his school was, since Jay was already very late. Minu requested, however, that they wait a little longer. One of those present insinuated that Jay was avoiding the challenge. Minu, confident in Jay, replied that there was no need for such arrogance because Jay would show up soon. Minu suggested that while waiting, they could do a warm-up round. The group underestimated Minu since his leg was injured. In the heat of the moment, Jay finally showed up, and everyone began referencing some of Jay's accomplishments. Upon seeing Jay, Minu remarked it was a shame since Minu had been eager to race against TJ and his carbon bike, but perhaps there would be another chance next time. TJ then asked if Jay was really the guy who had challenged him. As TJ approached Jay, he extended his hand for a handshake, saying TJ thought Jay wouldn't show up. Jay, however, ignored the gesture, as he usually did. TJ wondered if Jay had some sort of issue. When Jay got closer, Minu mentioned he had been worried, thinking Jay wouldn't come. Jay got straight to the point and told them to get to what mattered since he was busy. Jay explained that June would outline how everything would work. June, greeting from a distance to avoid being ignored, mentioned he was from Sunny School. June said his name was June Lee, and he was in his 3rd year, surprising Minu, who noticed June's formal introduction. Another boy, Jack Joe, informed them he was in his 2nd year. Jack then explained the basics of the bike race. The rules were simple, a one-on-one competition. The winner would be the one who returned first to the starting point, adding that Jay probably already knew the route. Even so, they would place people at every turn to ensure safety and keep everyone on track. Minu explained that his opponent was the arrogant guy nearby, TJ. Jay coldly responded, telling Minu not to bother him about joining the team after the race. June handed Jay a helmet and emphasized the importance of staying safe. While inspecting the bike, Minu noticed that Jay had removed the brakes, possibly to make it lighter. With everyone ready, TJ, trying to provoke Jay, challenged him to keep up with that junk. Minu told TJ to stop boasting and focus on the race. Irritated, TJ asked why Minu always enjoyed showing off. An announcement was made to the group that the race would be filmed. The setup was simple. Once the gear was released, they would start pedaling. Holding the gear with his fingers, the announcer told everyone to focus. He then released it, and it dropped slowly to the ground. As soon as the gear hit the ground, everyone surged forward, starting the race. TJ quickly took the lead, thanks to his lighter bike. June knew the real race would begin once they started pedaling harder and accelerating. June needed to hurry to capture everything on camera. TJ kept mocking Jay, calling Jay's bike a piece of trash. Looking back briefly, TJ told Jay to get used to the view or overtake him. It seemed TJ's words served as motivation for Jay to push his bike even harder. Looking back again, TJ realized Jay was gaining quickly, and this wouldn't be as easy as he thought. Jay was closing the gap rapidly, forcing TJ to significantly increase his speed. Luckily, they were approaching a marked curve. He would toss a few cones to make make things harder for his rival. For Jay, however, the cones meant little since he was used to navigating obstacles daily. June noticed TJ's dirty trick and questioned his motives. Indeed, the cone caused some imbalance for Jay. While filming and observing the situation, June shouted for Jay to be careful of what lay ahead. A car was approaching their path, and a collision seemed imminent. But Jay thought fast. The car served as a ramp, giving him extra momentum. He performed an interesting maneuver in the process, which infuriated TJ, as that was not part of his plan. June, filming the entire scene, was left both amazed and convinced the footage would turn out incredible. After recovering from that small incident, Jay kept pedaling and gaining speed. After the scare, June felt relieved not to have witnessed a disaster. He also shouted at TJ to stop with his reckless behavior. At one point, TJ sarcastically apologized, claiming his foot might have slipped. However, Jay was bolder than TJ had anticipated. June, while filming, kept an eye on TJ's movements, wary of what he might try. On the other hand, June admired Jay's skills, thinking the 360 maneuver and his reaction time were phenomenal. June wished his classmates had witnessed it live. The race continued, with Jay closing in fast on TJ. In moments, they were side by side, and Jay just wanted to end this ridiculous race. TJ assumed Jay was only talking to throw him off. Up ahead, a sharp curve signaled another challenge, and TJ was already hatching plans. He thought he might pull something off in that tight turn, as he had noticed something critical. Instead of slowing down, TJ seemed to speed up even more. Jay, however, had a different perspective on cycling. He took the turn with spectacular proficiency. Now, TJ had a full, unobstructed view of Jay's spectacle and maneuvers. He even had the chance to witness a perfectly executed drift right in front of him. As soon as they passed the curve, Jay had a noticeable lead ahead. TJ's face showed the impatience he was feeling, unlike Jay, who was simply enjoying the race with ease, embracing the moment and the circumstances. June was more excited about Jay, never imagining he would use a drift to take a curve. June had no idea where Jay could have learned to ride so well, but Jay rode that old bike as if it were an extension of his own body. For TJ, who was behind and resentful at not being able to close the distance, it seemed unthinkable that his carbon bike was losing to that piece of junk. While TJ was still fuming, he looked ahead and noticed Jay waving toward his rear. Looking back at TJ, Jay said that now TJ would have that view. This drove TJ crazy, and he began pedaling in an insane burst of effort. Furious, TJ said Jay could wait, as it wasn't over yet. TJ told him he would catch up and that it was just a matter of time. Looking back at TJ, Jay stated that studying wouldn't be necessary. His goal was to finish everything in 4 minutes. Jay knew TJ didn't want him to think that, just because he was ahead, the race was already won. Jay truly despised everyone at school, considering them a group of fools. The gap between them began to increase rapidly. June hoped nothing serious would happen, wishing for everything to end well. Jay pedaled effortlessly, while TJ strained himself to the limit to catch up. Annoyed, TJ said he wouldn't allow Jay to surpass him so easily. He declared that he would catch him on the last hill. However, this wasn't a challenge for Jay, who had already executed several maneuvers. June, who was behind recording the moment, shouted for both to slow down because the descent was too steep. Additionally, there was a fence at the bottom of the hill. June feared someone might get seriously injured if they couldn't maneuver properly. Nevertheless, slowing down didn't seem to be the intention of either of them, despite June's constant shouting. Jay, highly skilled, descended without even touching the fence ahead. He significantly reduced his speed, merely brushing it to push himself forward, and continued, pedaling as if nothing had happened. However, the one coming behind was having trouble. It was TJ. Having gained too much speed on a steep hill with a fence at the bottom, he was now in trouble. No matter how much he braked, he couldn't stop in time to avoid colliding with the fence ahead. Unfortunately, he couldn't avoid the impact and crashed against the fence as his bike tumbled. June, who was cautiously coming behind, noticed TJ's minor accident. Jay, looking back, saw what had happened and immediately went to help him. After confirming TJ couldn't ride anymore, Jay slowed down his bike. With that characteristic look, Jay called TJ a loser and then continued pedaling at a leisurely pace. Meanwhile, TJ was getting up from the ground, and June ran to check if he was okay. Still on the ground, TJ's injuries stung, but his pride hurt more. At the finish line, people were busy with various activities to pass the time. Minu was entertaining himself with a bike and obstacle game. When he heard someone say they were returning, he thought the race had been quick and grew excited, as he had also broken his own record in the game. They commented that the sunny cyclist had arrived first, meaning TJ had lost. TJ's colleagues were surprised, disbelieving his loss, and were worried because he hadn't shown up yet. Minu thought that all the talk about TJ had been for nothing. He had finally gotten what he deserved. However, Minu remembered always saying it wasn't about the bike but the cyclist that mattered. He knew he would need to watch the video when June returned. Day looked at Minu and asked him to remember what he had said before the race. Day took off his helmet and tossed it to Minu. Putting his hood back on, Day told Minu Minu not to bother him at school anymore with those race stories. Day passed by the others as he headed back home. Everyone thought he was very tough. Minu was eager for his friend to arrive soon because he wanted to know all the details of what had happened. As soon as Minu heard, he was surprised and asked what had occurred. Minu saw that Jay was carrying TJ and asking for a first aid kit. Onlookers asked what had happened and suggested TJ be taken to the hospital. TJ, gritting his teeth in pain, couldn't believe he had to endure such humiliation. Even injured, TJ still displayed arrogance, demanding that the person responsible for his accident be brought to him. Back home after the race, Jay noticed the house was empty since his mother was on duty. His brother, K-Joe, asked Jay where he had been messing around, suspecting he was riding his bike again. Jay didn't respond and simply bent down to take off his shoes, while his brother kept talking about university and entrance exams, insisting that he couldn't spend time biking with friends. Everything changed for Jay when he heard the TV, which was starting to play Kitty Hour. Jay jumped with excitement as the long-awaited cartoon had finally begun, not noticing that he had stubbed his toe on a corner. He rolled back and forth in pain, but it slowly subsided as the anime began. Gradually, his sad expression turned to one of fascination with what he was watching. Despite appearing mature, Jay was thoroughly delighted whenever a cat-themed anime aired on TV. K-Joe took advantage of Jay's distraction to head off for a shower, aiming to wash off the sweat from the race. While showering, K-Joe reflected on moments from the competition. Flashes of the race replayed in his mind. A strange feeling took over K-Joe. He had never reacted like this before. The next day, Jay was ready for school again. Inspecting his bike's tires, Jay noticed they were ruined due to the previous day's race. This wasn't good, and as he pondered over it, his brother came outside and observed him. K-Joe asked what was wrong with the bike, and wanted to know if Jay was really planning to ride it to school. Seeing his brother preparing to bike to school, K-Joe thought he was obsessed with bikes. However, Jay paid no attention to his brother's remark that riding a bike in the morning was a waste of energy. A student shouldn't exhaust themselves so early. Jay, already set to bike to school, simply said goodbye. K-Joe didn't understand what was wrong with his brother or what he would become if he kept acting this way. K-Joe was standing there, all serious, when a spotted cat suddenly appeared in front of him, freezing in fear. K-Joe had chased that cat on other occasions, and in that moment felt the urge to chase it again. Meanwhile, Mia was rushing because she had almost missed the bus, which was crowded that day. While she was crammed into the overheated bus with many others and surrounded by terrible traffic, Jay was simply cycling, enjoying the fresh breeze on his face. Inside the bus, people complained about the chaotic morning traffic. Mia looked around, feeling disconnected from the conversations of the boys nearby. Suddenly, her eyes caught sight of something that made her blush. It was her beloved riding by on his bike. Seeing him cycling to school, she momentarily forgot how unpleasant being on the bus was. Soon, the boys noticed that a bike could actually be faster than the bus. They realized they might need a faster and more comfortable bicycle. Meanwhile, inside a luxurious car also stuck in traffic, a young man was grumbling. However, the driver could do little, slowly inching forward toward the school. But when the young man saw a cyclist who would undoubtedly reach school long before him, he told the driver he'd rather bike than stay in the car. As Jay continued on his bike, the school principal, who also owned a bike and loved cycling, approached him. Jay glanced to the side and saw the principal, who commented that biking was a nice way to get some morning exercise. Jay found it natural that the principal also rode a bike to school. The principal, a well-built man, always commuted to work on his bicycle. Jay realized it was important to be cautious while cycling since riders like them weren't always welcomed. Sidewalks and roads were unsafe for cyclists, and unfortunately, even bike lanes didn't provide complete safety. Smiling, the principal told Jay to set the conversation aside and pick up the pace. Laughing, Jay remarked that the principal and the student council president couldn't afford to be late. At the school entrance, there was a commotion as some students were being stopped. One second-year student was singled out for his lack of uniform or extravagant behavior. He tried to sneak past but was stopped because his hair was an unusual color. When confronted, he was asked if he had accidentally spilled orange juice on his hair. Additionally, the student wasn't wearing his badge or carrying his backpack. He claimed he had left them at school. However, this wasn't the answer they had been expecting. When Jay and the principal arrived, they saw all the chaos unfolding so early in the morning. The principal wanted to know what was happening, and the staff member explained they were simply enforcing the conduct code. The principal responded that it wasn't the best way to start the day. It seemed like all the students gathered there were the most attractive ones. The principal wanted to ensure the school's image wouldn't be compromised, and that students would be more mindful of their attire. All of them, putting on innocent faces, promised the principal they would maintain a good appearance. Shortly after, they ran off like mischievous children. However, the handsome student with orange hair stopped to listen to beautiful girls entering the scene. He thought to himself, since when were there such stunning girls around? Being small and cute, he caught their attention, and they invited him to meet them at lunchtime. The principal observed that the boy still retained his youthful charm. The janitor reminded the principal that he had a lecture scheduled for the morning. In the classroom, there was noise, people chatting, and others trying to sleep. Yuna was showing her phone to Mia, displaying a photo of the principal with an explanatory text, which she said was material for the lecture. He definitely had style, and Yuna noticed Mia staring at someone and asked why she was doing that. Mia was merely observing, as Jay had come to school on a bicycle that day. Yuna teased her, saying someone there was in love. When Yuna looked, her admirer, perhaps the guy with the Band-Aid mustache, was calling for her. She playfully threw a book at his forehead and told him not to shout behind her. He realized it was her way of showing she liked him. While all this commotion happened in the classroom, Jay was in the corner reading a book. Some boys in his class were talking about a video they'd seen online about a bicycle race. Even those who didn't like bicycles were interested in the video. Minu, passing by Jay, said he'd seen the video June had recorded of the race. The girls with Minu wanted to know how he knew the student council president. Mia was a very brave girl, always paying attention to what was happening during class. Meanwhile, a boy who admired Mia was asleep. Everyone in the classroom was somewhat bored, except for those who were sleeping and dreaming about getting scolded by Yuna. Occasionally, Mia would glance at her beloved to see if he noticed her. Even if he didn't look back, just imagining he might look made her blush. At one point, he did look, but indifferently. Perhaps he didn't even see her and was just gazing at the clouds. Everyone was leaving when someone noticed Jay from afar, preparing to ride again. Unable to resist, Dom Kang wanted to ride for a second, so he placed a hand on Jay's shoulder and asked. Dom Kang was completely ignored and had no choice but to watch Jay leave. From a distance, Jade approached and told Dom Kang he couldn't borrow the bike, warning that he would probably break it. Dom Kang felt calmer when he heard Yuna's voice approaching. Radiating happiness, Dom Kang asked Yuna if she had noticed how radiant and beautiful his skin looked that day. Yuna replied that his face was oily because he'd slept through the entire class. Dom Kang insisted, repeatedly telling Yuna to stop pretending she didn't like him, as he had noticed her watching him while he slept. That's when Yuna playfully kicked the back of Dom Kang's leg and kindly asked him to be quiet. On his way home, Jay was riding his bike when he heard a noise coming from the tires. Jay stopped to check and realized his bike had finally gotten a flat. That's when TJ and his friends arrived, asking Jay if he wanted help fixing the piece of junk. Jay, barely recognizing TJ with his glasses and strange face, asked if TJ remembered him. Dom Kang was walking calmly, as he had won over Yuna's affection to the point his body was sore. Since Dom Kang had overslept during class, he needed to hurry to get to work. That's when Dom Kang saw Jay from afar, the guy he had asked to ride the bike who hadn't let him. Dom Kang noticed Jay wasn't alone, and that some troublemakers seemed to be bothering him. TJ asked if Jay had slept well, because TJ himself hadn't, and his forehead hurt. Jay, unsure who was speaking, asked TJ who he was. This made TJ furious, thinking Jay was mocking or ignoring them. Kicking Jay's bike, TJ accused Jay of being cocky just because he'd won with that piece of junk. Seeing his bike on the ground, Jay couldn't hold back. TJ said that first Jay had humiliated him in front of everyone with that pile of nothing, and now Jay was ignoring him, but Jay didn't want to hear it. He punched TJ to stop him from talking nonsense and for kicking his bike. At first, Jay didn't seem to be much of a fighter, as the punch didn't have much effect. However, it was enough to make TJ and his friends furious. TJ and his friends taught Jay a lesson and stomped on his glasses. Then TJ crouched to Jay's level on the ground and asked how Jay would show up to class the next day. TJ also asked if Jay remembered him now, but even after everything, Jay still didn't recall. TJ said Jay might need another lesson to improve his memory. That's when Dom Kang spoke, drawing everyone's attention with his boldness. Upon seeing Dom Kang, TJ, not knowing who he was, dismissed him as just another loser. Dom Kang remarked that it was funny how bullies always fought 3 against 1. After saying that, he dropped his backpack on the ground. Cracking his knuckles, Dom Kang said he would join the fight. TJ asked if Dom Kang was lost. That's when TJ's companions whispered to him, asking if he didn't know who that person was. Wide-eyed, TJ's friends murmured about Dom Kang, warning that he was dangerous. Things seemed to get serious. Whatever TJ's friends told him made TJ back out of the fight. TJ glared at Jay and said he couldn't stand fools from that school. TJ added that Jay should thank Dom Kang for that, since TJ considered Jay lucky. TJ and his friends left before the situation could escalate further. Dom Kang realized that, aside from being impressive, he was also quite intimidating, as the mere sight of him made TJ and his friends vanish. Dom Kang extended a hand to Jay, but Jay simply ignored it. After getting up, Jay said he was fine and told Dom Kang to forget about him and leave. Confused, Dom Kang touched his hair, wondering why everyone around him acted like they didn't like him. Not far away, Mino was walking, accompanied by 2 girls, and planning to go to karaoke. But ahead, as Mino passed by, there was TJ, who had previously picked on Mino before leaving. TJ sarcastically remarked how nice it must be to have money, since otherwise, Mino wouldn't have 2 girls around him. However, Mino canceled his plans with the girls when he saw Jay up ahead. Mino apologized to the girls, promising to reschedule their karaoke outing later. The girls were visibly disappointed. Nearby, Dom Kang was trying to explain to Jay that the bike was wrecked and that Jay was in bad shape. That's when Mino appeared, asking what had happened to Jay's face. Did he get into a fight? Dom Kang explained that some jerks from another school had been beating on Jay when Dom Kang showed up and stopped them. TJ knew what that meant. The guys who were with him earlier were probably trying to get revenge. Jay asked TJ if he was satisfied with the answer, then told him to leave him alone. Mino felt guilty and apologized for getting Jay involved in such a situation. Dom Kang simply told Jay to forget about it and never mention the team again. However, Dom was concerned about Jay's injuries and wanted him to go to a pharmacy. Jay didn't want to ask for help, but Dom insisted that something was seriously wrong with him. Dom even offered to at least walk Jay home, but Jay adamantly told him to stay out of his life. Frustrated with the standoff, Dom Kang decided to take drastic action. He stepped forward, got close to Jay, and with one swift hit, knocked him unconscious. Mino asked why Dom had done that, stating it wasn't necessary, but Dom explained that it was nothing compared to what Yuna would have done. Still, Mino questioned how Dom could hit an injured guy like that. Dom clarified that if he hadn't intervened, they would have spent the entire day arguing. Dom picked Jay up, slung him over his shoulder, and began walking normally, telling Mino to grab the bike. When Mino asked where they were going, Dom replied that he didn't know either. It seemed neither Dom nor Mino knew where Jay lived. The girls nearby thought Dom's behavior was a bit jerkish. Mino then went to the pharmacy to buy some medication and bandages for Jay. While waiting, Mino noticed Dom Kang drop something on the ground. Afterward, they both stood there, looking at the unconscious Jay, unsure of what to do with him. Neither Dom nor Mino knew Jay's address. As they approached a nearby area, they noticed someone looking at their phone, which displayed an image of a white cat. It was K-Joe, Jay's brother, passing by and planning to stop at home for a moment before heading to his class. A conversation among some people nearby caught K-Joe's attention. He thought they were bullies from Sunny High and noticed an unconscious person near them. Looking closer, K-Joe thought he recognized the face. Who was that boy? It was then that K-Joe realized it was Jay, his brother. Startled, he called out, catching the attention of Dom and Mino, who were pondering nearby. Dom Kang thought he heard the boy mention Jay's name, and Mino thought the same. K-Joe, terrified, didn't know what to do as the two guys stared at him. He feared he might be their next target. Mino wondered if K-Joe knew Jay, while Dom Kang suspected they were related. Trying to avoid eye contact, Dom Kang said he didn't know the boy and calmly began walking away. Dom Kang was convinced he wasn't mistaken. He was sure he had heard the boy mention Jay's name. Mino was observing closely and realized that the boy was significant, reminding him of someone. Then, Dom and Mino, piecing the puzzle together, realized the boy looked just like Jay, only younger. That's when they noticed K-Joe was lying and was, in fact, Jay's brother. Dom and Mino couldn't believe that, even seeing his brother unconscious, K-Joe walked calmly, as if he didn't know him. Furious, Dom and Mino wanted to know why K-Joe was trying to act so calm while clearly running away. Dom Kang picked up Jay, still unconscious, and Mino grabbed the bicycle. The two then began following K-Joe. After some time, everything was cleared up, and K-Joe understood they were his brother's friends. When asked if he was abandoning his brother, K-Joe explained that he ran because he thought Dom and Mino would beat him up or something like that. K-Joe said he needed to take care of Jay. That's when Dom Kang realized how selfish he himself had been. K-Joe remarked that by running around and getting into fights, it seemed Jay had chosen his friends well. When they arrived at Jay's house, they placed him in his room, and Dom Kang began patching him up with bandages. After cleaning Jay's forehead, Dom finished the difficult task, doing everything he could. Now, it was up to the patient. K-Joe, however, couldn't believe his brother had such unbearable friends. Mino asked about the bandage under Dom Kang's nose, and Dom Kang revealed he had his own secret. Mino, quite curious, pulled off the bandage to see what was underneath. Seeing what was there, Mino commented that if the principal saw that, Dom Kang would be in serious trouble. Mino asked K-Joe if there was anyone else in the house. Looking around the room, Mino noticed it was a typical boys' room. Mino also saw K-Joe staring at what seemed to be surveillance, and K-Joe said he was watching to ensure nothing got stolen. The more K-Joe talked, the more Mino thought he resembled his annoying brother. Dom and Mino rummaged through the room until they found a picture frame with a photo of Jay's uncle and a bicycle from when Jay was a child. Mino approached to show the frame, but Dom Kang found it strange for him to get so close. Looking at the photo, Dom Kang realized that the child in the image couldn't be K-Joe, that annoying boy. Then, they noticed the boy in the photo seemed kind, and realized it was Jay. Minu pointed out that Jay had owned that bicycle since he was little, then asked why he had shown up for the race after implying he wouldn't. Dom Kang found it odd that Minu was whispering. After observing him for a while, Dom Kang started noticing that the boy before him was gradually transforming into Yuna. Dom Kang thought he might be hallucinating because the boy looked so much like Yuna. Embarrassed, Dom Kang then wondered if he had been feeling a bit lonely lately. Until then, Minu and Dom Kang had hadn't been close enough friends with Jay to know that he and Yuna were twins. Minu thought it was a family photo, but he couldn't remember who the boy in it was. Suddenly, Jay, his face covered in band-aids, woke up and asked what they were doing in his house. Minu and Dom Kang exchanged glances, then asked if Jay had finally woken up and if he had slept well. Jay got up, walked over to them, and snatched the photo frame from their hands. Angry, Jay told them to keep their dirty hands off his things and get out. Minu quickly grabbed a mirror and showed Jay his reflection, explaining that they had only brought him there to take care of him. Dom Kang, looking proud, said they didn't need to thank him, as he was just doing his duty. In a matter of seconds, Dom Kang removed all the band-aids from Jay's face. Jay told them he wasn't interested in arguing. He was tired and just wanted them to leave. Dom Kang placed a hand on Jay's shoulder and asked if he was really going to send them away like that. Minu and Dom Kang concluded that Jay wasn't being very kind, especially since they were only there to help him. They then decided to open Pandora's box and see what was on Jay's computer. Jay, angry, told them not to mess with his computer, but they ignored him and did it anyway. While Minu took the opportunity to pin Jay down, Dom Kang disdainfully examined everything Jay was studying on the computer. Smiling, Dom Kang told Jay he would show him the dark path to an entirely new world. Dom Kang added that Jay should be happy to have met them, but Jay still didn't want them messing with his computer. Meanwhile, Keijo thought it would be better to go to class, as he was wasting too much time because of those three. Finally, Dom Kang finished setting up the link. Dom Kang asked if they were ready, and that's when Jay's brother opened the door. Seeing what they were looking at, Jay's brother realized they were facing the forbidden world. Everyone gathered around, watching the content Dom Kang had put on the computer. Although blushing like the others, Jay's brother was angry because those idiots had downloaded junk files. He complained that his computer had become a mess and hesitated for a moment, checking if anyone was approaching. Before Jay's brother could delete or review the content, Jay returned. This time, Jay returned to relay a message from their mother. A little further away, Minwoo and Dom Kang were discussing the video. Minwoo liked Keijo's style and suggested they hang out more often. Minwoo and Dom Kang agreed to meet again at school the next day, since both had commitments. That's when Minwoo remembered he had a part-time job after school. Minwoo thought the day should end on a high note. Taking advantage of the moment his phone rang, Minu decided it could be a good opportunity. Minu gathered the team and announced an emergency meeting for that night, asking everyone to attend. It was essential for TJ and his gang to be there. Everyone was gathered as Minu had requested, but many were complaining about the meeting. Hearing the complaints, TJ smirked and said that if anyone had an issue, they should take it up directly with Minu. Some questioned if something had happened between Minu and TJ, as TJ's presence had been specifically requested. Feigning ignorance, TJ replied that it wasn't the first time Minu had acted like that. However, June commented that, regardless, Minu was the one who had started the team, so he deserved to be heard. June added that there must have been a reason for calling the meeting at that time. TJ remarked that June was just defending his friend from the same school. Those words made June uncomfortable, but before he could respond, he noticed Minu arriving. Minu walked in with a very serious expression, as if something significant had happened. TJ, unfazed by Minu's seriousness, continued with his jokes. More irritated than when he arrived, Minu adjusted his jacket and took a ring off his finger. Minu declared he was going to settle things with TJ, and without hesitation, approached and punched him squarely in the face. The impact knocked TJ to the ground, and he needed help to get back up. No one understood what was happening. Those present demanded an explanation for Minu's seemingly baseless behavior. Minu then stated that TJ needed to stop slandering their team and leave while he could still walk. His declaration surprised everyone, and they wanted to know what he meant. Irritated, TJ asked why Minu had punched him so suddenly. Minu told him not to play dumb, explaining that he didn't want losers like TJ acting without reason against their members. Smirking, TJ asked if he meant the student council president, whom he considered an idiot. He claimed it was obvious Minu didn't realize the other guy had started the provocation. TJ then boldly asserted that the one who should actually leave the team was Minu. Confused, Minu realized TJ was trying to take his place. Nearby, his friend June noticed the situation becoming increasingly chaotic. TJ stated that the team members seemed more dissatisfied with Minu than with him. Minu immediately challenged everyone to stop complaining behind his back and say it to his face. One by one, they voiced their grievances. They complained about being called to meetings without prior notice and pointed out that since TJ wasn't officially part of the team, maybe he had a point. They added that no one should be forced out without consulting everyone first, noting Minu made them gather at a specific time just to expel TJ. Satisfied, TJ turned to Minu, highlighting everyone's dissatisfaction. He brought up that Minu hadn't been cycling lately due to his injured leg and claimed all he did was wander around with girls. Mockingly, he suggested Minu start his own club at school since his father's money would make it easy. June stepped in, urging them to stop because they had crossed the line. Hearing everything, Minu proposed a race to decide decide who would stay and who would leave Team Zephyrus. June thought it was a terrible idea. TJ liked the proposal, questioning how Minu could even ride with an injured leg, but figured defeating him wouldn't be an issue anyway. TJ accepted the challenge and suggested a 3-on-3 race. It was decided. 3 riders from each side would compete, and the losers would leave. Minu said he would happily face all 3 alone. However, June insisted on joining, knowing it would be too much for Minu's leg. Still, no one else offered to substitute for the 3rd spot, making it a showdown between Sunny High and Mountain High. TJ joked, asking if anyone else would volunteer for Minu's team, adding that anyone willing to leave with those idiots was welcome. Silence was their only response. Thus, it was agreed the competition would be Sunny High versus Mountain High. Satisfied, TJ was happy it would be a 2-against-3 race. Minu, TJ, and June stared at each other for a while. Meanwhile, the school environment could be quite boring, often putting students to sleep. That's what happened to one young student, who dreamt a giant dragon appeared right after he gathered magical spheres. The dragon of the spheres was capable of granting a wish. The student wished for a perfect proportional body like Chris Hemsworth's. The dragon said it was easy, he just needed to eat a specific mushroom. Very satisfied, he took a bite, and after feeling intense agony, transformed completely. Wherever he passed, he made young maidens' hearts race. He became a handsome young man wearing a classic Chesterfield coat, the kind only tall men can pull off. These coats give a slim silhouette, but conceal a muscular physique. All the girls admired his posture, wanting a man like him and asking if he had a girlfriend. Very gallant, he told them he could charge for the beats of their hearts by the digit. They all agreed to pay, pressing his head against their ample bosoms. At least that way he could hear several hearts beating simultaneously. The situation was so comfortable that he drooled on his desk while he slept. Gradually, someone called his name from a distance. Slowly, he opened his eyes and saw his classmate, feeling unhappy because it was all just a dream. Shin-young asked him about it, as he muttered that several girls were pressing his head. When she wanted more details, he brushed it off, saying it was nothing, and thanked her for the carton of milk she brought. He had a habit of calling her Little Water, which left her quite discouraged. Drinking the milk, he imagined feeling the smooth taste of calcium making him taller. Just then, a friend approached, putting an arm around his neck in a friendly headlock. However, the sudden move made him choke and waste most of the milk he was drinking. Someone wanted a girl to go somewhere with him, but another girl wouldn't let her pass. So, he recorded the romance between the buddies, not missing a moment and finding it very interesting. Passing by in the background, June and Minu asked Minu what he planned to do. The answer was obvious. Minu planned to win and kick TJ out of the group. Minu's friend was worried about how Minu would accomplish such a feat, considering his leg wasn't healed yet. Laughing, Minu said the doctor had told him that light cycling would help with recovery. However, Minu's friend warned that a little cycling wouldn't be enough for the race. He also said that with the relay format, they were at a great disadvantage. Minu's friend suggested asking the student council president, Jay, for help. Minu didn't like the idea. Minu didn't want to involve Jay in the team's matters anymore, and Minu's friend was becoming worried. A bit bored in the classroom, drawing little bicycles, was the student council president, Jay. Jay was in that state when someone placed an envelope on his desk. Looking up, Jay realized it was Mia. Mia looked at Jay and said it was something for his injury. She seemed concerned about him, but Jay simply said he hadn't asked Mia to get anything like that for him. Seeing that Jay had hurt her friend, Mia slammed the desk. She told Jay that when a girl tried to help, showing interest, the least he could do was be polite and say, "Thank you." Mia was upset because her friend had been sad all morning after seeing Jay's injuries. Mia was extremely embarrassed by Yuna's comments. Things got a bit worse when Dom Kang arrived, giving Jay a hearty slap on the back. Then, Dom Kang wrapped an arm around Jay's neck and asked if Jay was tired and if he had stayed up late. Yuna was surprised. She didn't know they were acquainted. Kang said they had connected through a computer screen. Yuna had no idea what Dom Kang was talking about, and her friend Mia didn't either. A guy called for Jay, saying a senior student wanted to talk to him in the hallway. Dom Kang thought Jay was becoming too popular, but shrugged it off and went to Yuna's side. As always, Yuna showered Dom Kang with affection. Rumors were circulating that the two were starting to date and acting a bit strange. While some girls were talking about Yuna and Dom Kang, they didn't notice the third-year boy standing nearby. When the girls saw him, they became embarrassed, but June was an easygoing guy. The girls left, whispering that he was very handsome, though one of them mentioned she'd heard he wasn't interested in girls. June overheard this and felt awkward since the situation wasn't what they assumed. June's expression changed, however, when he saw Jay's bruised face. June still didn't know about TJ. That's when June realized this might be why his friend Minu had been so angry with TJ. June, noticing the way Jay was looking at him, thought Jay might not remember June. June even wondered if Jay had some kind of facial recognition issue, so June spent 5 minutes explaining who he was and how they knew each other. This was helpful because Jay finally understood who June was and remembered meeting June before. June explained that he had approached to ask a favor and shared what Minu had done after seeing Jay's face. June mentioned that he didn't want to involve Jay in those matters anymore, but couldn't abandon his friend. Jay was blunt and said he didn't want to get involved with their team anymore. June tried to explain that things had become unfair and that if Minu lost, Minu would be expelled from his own team. Jay asked why that should matter to Jay. Still, June shared that the race would take place that night at 8 p.m. in the same location as the previous race. June added that if Jay changed his mind and decided to help, they would be there. The group was already gathered at the race location, and the main topic of discussion was who would win. The loser would be expelled from the group, which heightened the tension. Elsewhere, June sat on a bench adjusting his shoe. Minu was feeling confident, and calling June said it was time to begin. In reality, it was already 8 minutes past the scheduled time, and June realized he'd been waiting. June began to doubt that Jay would show up, and without Jay, the situation seemed grim. TJ's team was even more confident, as their numerical advantage of 3 against 2 gave them an edge from the start. June noticed that TJ had added a brake to his bike, possibly due to the incident in the last race. June also asked if TJ had replaced his front wheel with an 8mm carbon one. TJ, as usual, started making snide remarks, pointing out that Minu hadn't been on a bike in ages. Laughing, TJ told Minu to take it easy, or he might end up injuring his other leg too. Tired of TJ's comments, Minu decided it was time to start the race. Before they began, the rules were reviewed, but everyone's attention shifted to the arrival of a girl on a scooter. She managed to capture the attention of all the guys with her bold entrance. Taking off her helmet, she said she was glad she made it in time, and introduced herself as Harry Lee. She explained that she was a commentator for a bike show on the internet channel Paprika TV. She had heard about the race and decided to attend. Upon removing her helmet, Harry revealed a stunning face that left all the guys blushing. She also mentioned she hoped to live stream the race if everyone agreed. Minu, ever the charmer, said it would be an honor to have such a beautiful woman document the event. TJ was thrilled at the idea, excited to humiliate Minu online. Harry quickly checked her 4G connection and started her live stream as usual. Viewers found it fascinating to watch a live broadcast of such an important race that would decide who stayed in the group. The official explaining the race, momentarily paused by Harry's arrival, now resumed. He explained that the event would be a standard relay race, where participants would pass a baton. Instead of batons, LED bracelets would be used. When enough pressure was applied, they would secure themselves to the wrist. He demonstrated how to do it by pressing the correct spot on the bracelet. In summary, the competitors had to deposit the bracelets at designated points, and the first team to complete the handoffs would win. The losing team, as everyone knew, would be expelled from the group. The leader of the losing team was asked if they were truly prepared to compete. He didn't quite understand the question. However, with a 3-2 advantage, the race already seemed uneven. The leader then told them to stop worrying about it, asserting that it didn't matter if the opposing team had more members. It was agreed that in the end, no one could complain about unfairness. The competition began, and one member from each team stepped forward to put on their armband. Initially, Minu would face TJ. The two were already clashing as they grabbed their armbands. Harry Lee broadcast to her audience that the race between Sunny High and Mountain High was about to begin. She announced that she was preparing to film and share everything with the viewers. TJ was ready to teach a lesson to the losers from the rival school. The first racer for Mountain High would be Hyung Min, and his opponent would be June. Minu commented that the first section of the track had several curves, which meant the bike wouldn't offer much advantage. June worried if he could complete the last 2 stretches with his leg in its current condition. The problem was that June didn't know if TJ would be the second or third racer, and he needed to figure that out somehow. With no other options, June's friend agreed to provide support for the first leg, leaving June to focus on his performance. June then asked his friend not to push himself too hard, as June was already prepared to start and handle the rest of the course. The competitors lined up at the starting line, and those who wouldn't race watched the broadcast on their phones. Harry, ready to record, positioned herself. It was announced that, just like in previous races, the competition would start when the gear touched the ground. The guy with the gear prepared, holding it by the edges of his fingers, ready to let it slowly fall to the ground. As soon as the gear touched the ground, the two started the race. The competition began fiercely, with June performing well at the start. Harry Lee, recording live, followed closely on her bike, a camera mounted on her helmet. It was easy to see that the blue armband indicated Mountain High, and the red one represented Sunny High. At that moment, Mountain High took the lead. The race was being streamed live, and people from different places were commenting on it. The crowd waiting for the participants' return also followed the race closely, watching their efforts with each pedal stroke. Despite his effort, June didn't have Minu's skills and struggled to keep pace. June's rival from Sunny High taunted him, asking if that was truly all June could manage, despite clearly seeing the effort he was putting in. The Sunny High competitor did his best to close the gap and was almost succeeding. The Sunny High rival suspected June might be plotting something, as June didn't respond to the insults and remained silent. Deciding it would be better to increase the gap, the rival started pedaling faster. To maintain the lead, the frontrunner pedaled his as fast as he could. However, the gap between him and the second-place racer didn't widen. Although still ahead, the pressure mounted on the front-runner, as it seemed the second-place racer could overtake him at any moment. That's when the front-runner realized the second-place racer was using a slipstream technique. June, though he seemed quiet, had his strategies. Harry, the commentator, also noticed the slipstream and quickly explained to her audience that this technique breaks the wind. This technique, used to reduce air resistance in motorcycle or bicycle races, is called drifting in cycling. The commentator called it a brilliant strategy for a high school race. The audience believed June was simply pedaling behind the leader, waiting for the right moment to use the technique. Even so, overtaking June wouldn't be an easy task. After Hyungmin, no one believed it was possible. However, the rival racer believed that after crossing the final hill, the conditions would be more favorable for him. As the Sunny High competitor passed June, he thanked him for breaking the wind. This infuriated June's opponent, but what truly bothered him was the overtake itself, which put the Sunny High competitor in the lead. Now, muscle strength mattered most. The leader shifted to a heavier gear, pedaling with all his energy. Those behind noticed the maneuver, realizing the leader had shifted to a heavier gear. It was announced that the Sunny High racer, with the red armband, had taken the lead. A huge surprise. Sunny High's racer overtook his rival, especially on the uphill stretch, leaving Mountain High's competitor gradually falling behind. The gap began to grow, becoming too large to close in such a short time. June's friends, following everything online, thought he was incredible. Meanwhile, the second-place rival couldn't understand how June climbed so quickly. Further ahead, the two racers who had already finished their relay were positioned for the final leg. The sound of Harry Lee's scooter could be heard approaching, indicating they were nearing the finish line. Minhu suggested it was better to prepare and wished his opponent good luck, believing his opponent could catch up. Minhu didn't even know what he was talking about, unaware of who would actually reach the finish line first. Minhu asked Jiwon if his teammate would be able to surpass June, and then the worst happened. Minhu saw with his own eyes that it wasn't his teammate approaching but June. June pointed ahead, and Minhu quickly spotted the approaching racer. This left Jiwon unsettled, as it represented a disadvantage for their team. June was in the lead, alone, with no competitor nearby. Minhu watched proudly, knowing what June was capable of, and June smiled back at him. With all that positive energy, Minhu informed his opponent that they would soon reach the finish line. June quickly removed his bracelet, ready to pass it to his teammate. June wished Minhu good luck and then set off, determined to win the race. The commentator noticed that Sunny School's second racer had already secured the bracelet and taken the lead. Their friends, watching online, believed that if Minhu could maintain his pace, he would be the winner. Harry, on her scooter, was positioned just behind Sunny School's second racer. She observed that the second racer was in the lead, far ahead of the other competitor. Soon, the second racer would enter the third and final segment of the race. All his team members watching the event noted how fast he was going, likely aware that Minhu and June were racing together. Meanwhile, June was drinking an energy drink to replenish himself. Though he seemed deep in thought, June just hoped his friend wouldn't push himself too hard and worsen his injury. This thought lingered in June's mind, reminding him of the accident where Minhu had severely injured his leg. June couldn't shake those memories until, sitting down, he spotted someone familiar in front of him. Meanwhile, in the race, Minhu was giving it his all, knowing that if he lost, June would also be expelled from the team. However, at one point, Minhu's leg began throbbing, and the pain became unbearable. At his position, waiting for the second racer, TJ was anxiously anticipating his turn. TJ grew frustrated when someone watching the race commented that he might be the one expelled from the team. The rival school was already in the lead, and TJ was furious, realizing they were pleased with the situation. TJ thought his teammate was approaching to hand off the bracelet to him, or so he believed. But then TJ saw the red bracelet and realized it wasn't his teammate, but the rival racer, pulling ahead with a gap too wide to close. Everyone noticed the speed was so high, it seemed more like a motorbike than a bicycle. TJ was furious with his teammate, who should have arrived much earlier, making the race harder. Far behind and exhausted, TJ's teammate, the racer passing the bracelet, was struggling to pedal as fast as he could. On their phones, many people followed the live broadcast, realizing that Sunny School's team had reached the final stretch. Meanwhile, Mountain School's team was still lagging with their second racer. Following the race while drying off after her shower to stay updated, the commentator noted that the gap between the teams was widening. This pleased Minhu's former friend, who seemed to still harbor a bit of fondness for their friendship. In the race, Minhu pedaled desperately, despite the intense pain. At one point, speeding uncontrollably, Minhu spotted a cat in the middle of the road playing with a ball. It was too late to stop. As Minhu tried to brake and avoid the cat, he overexerted his injured leg, aggravating the injury. Without the support of his leg, Minhu fell to the ground with a harsh crash. The commentator narrated everything she saw, and everyone following the livestream was upset. June, his loyal friend, was devastated by the news, while Minhu, lying on the ground, realized the race was over. The commentator, stepping in to give Minhu first aid, announced that the broadcast would be temporarily paused due to the accident. She turned off the live stream, leaving leaving all viewers in suspense. June knew Minu shouldn't have raced like that, especially with his injured leg. Unaware of the accident, TJ was pedaling as fast as he could, thinking he still had a chance to catch up. Further ahead, to his surprise, TJ saw the fallen bike, Minu on the ground, and the commentator assisting him. It was a sublime moment for TJ, who couldn't help but smile. Even he knew this outcome had been inevitable. From the start, racing with an injured leg had been a massive risk, but TJ thought his luck was unmatched. Minu, still on the ground, struggled to see who was near him. Slowly, his blurry vision began to clear. Harry Lee approached and asked if Minu could stand. Turning to the side, Minu noticed someone else, Jay, who asked what he was doing on the ground. Minu told him there was no need to stare like that, and that he could just send the message. Jay bent down slightly and removed the bracelet from Minu's arm. Both Minu and the commentator found that strange. Immediately after, however, Jay placed the bracelet on his own arm. He remembered he had already left food for his younger brother, along with a note saying he had just gone out to fix the bike and would be back soon. Still, his younger brother seemed to know exactly what Jay was really up to. June quickly explained the rules and the course to Jay, but Minu kept insisting that Jay didn't need to go. Jay, seriously, said it shouldn't be misunderstood. He was only going because he had matters to settle. Minu knew that wasn't entirely true, so he forced a smile. At that moment, Minu called out to Jay and tossed him the helmet. Minu asked Jay to teach those losers a proper lesson. Jay looked at the helmet, wondering if he really needed to wear it, as it was sweaty and smelled bad. Minu, noticing Jay's discomfort, complained, saying that his own helmet smelled fine while Jay's was unbearable. June, realizing Minu and Jay were well enough to complain, decided to stay put as she prepared to return to the race. As she moved to get on her scooter, she noticed the bike she already recognized from before. Meanwhile, further ahead, TJ was even singing as he was nearing the end. I can get through all of this struggle, he thought. The race is way too easy. This is great. TJ stopped being annoyed by Minu, and even felt a bit sorry for him, though he shouldn't have tried to race while injured. TJ found it quite inconvenient to have to finish the race alone. Standing up, Minu, quite cheerful, thought TJ should be worried because a monster was right behind him, and TJ quickly noticed that. He couldn't believe a cyclist was catching up to him. It was monstrous speed. Upon looking more closely, he realized it was Jay. TJ's eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't understand what Jay was doing there. That's when he realized the race wouldn't be as easy as he had initially thought. TJ started pedaling desperately, knowing that if he didn't, the other school would beat him. He realized Jay, chasing him with such skill on the bike, was a beast. TJ felt like Jay was hunting him like a mad dog. So little distance remained. TJ thought he had come too far to simply lose like that. He believed he wouldn't be overtaken on the downhill section just ahead. TJ thought that, to secure victory, all he needed to do was outpace Jay on the downhill. Feeling the constant pressure from Jay, TJ, sweating but sticking to his plan, continued as he had intended as soon as he reached the downhill section. However, TJ knew it wouldn't be that simple. When TJ started speeding down the hill, memories of the previous incident flashed through his mind. The fear of another collision overwhelmed TJ, causing him to brake and lose what little lead he still had. Meanwhile, Jay was a true beast on the downhill. For him, brakes simply didn't exist. Literally, as Jay's bike didn't even have them, but he didn't care in the slightest. Jay simply executed a rock walk during the downhill, performing a 180-degree drift. Such maneuvers were routine for Jay. For that reason, after completing the maneuver, Jay simply continued on his path, leaving TJ behind. TJ, extremely irritated, knew that any mistake could cost him the race and get him kicked off the team. The racer in the lead, Jay, sighed deeply and stopped. TJ noticed Jay had stopped a little ahead and seemed to be watching him intently. TJ asked what Jay was planning with this and shouted at him to get out of his way. Standing still, Jay stared at TJ, who didn't know what to do and had to hit the brakes. TJ hoped he could stop in time to avoid colliding with Jay, but that didn't happen. Jay, on the other hand, showed no emotion at all. TJ stopped just a few centimeters short of colliding with Jay. Furious, TJ wanted to know if Jay had lost his mind to stop like that in front of him. Jay, in turn, said he was there only because TJ had kicked his bike the day before. A strange question from Jay caught TJ completely off guard. Jay continued, saying he wanted to settle things once and for all and see who was truly fast. If TJ wanted a challenge, then so be it, especially since Jay wanted to return the favor. Jay said they would have a no-rules race for the remaining stretch to the finish line. Looking at TJ, Jay said he wanted to see if that carbon bike was really as fast as it seemed. TJ thought Jay was joking. There was no way that piece of junk could be better than his lightweight bike. Jay, staring back, said that, in the end, TJ shouldn't blame the bike. He should blame himself. TJ, not liking the direction of the conversation, told Jay to shut up and just get started already. The two positioned themselves correctly to start the race and took off. Both were determined to go as fast as possible to leave the other behind. At first, TJ's carbon bike was slightly ahead by mere millimeters. TJ smiled, seeing his opponent lagging behind, but it seemed Jay was just warming up. The real race was about to begin. Jay put so much power into his pedaling that he gained incredible momentum and overtook TJ. TJ couldn't believe he was losing to this guy who had seemingly come out of nowhere and was stealing spoiling his victory. Meanwhile, the team members noticed Minu and his friend Jun returning. They asked each other if Minu was okay and whether they thought he was really in such bad shape. Minu admitted he felt terrible about ruining the race, saying his leg wasn't fully healed yet. Jun reminded Minu that he'd warned him against doing such a reckless thing. Pushing his leg that way was irresponsible. Looking downcast, Minu acknowledged that racing with an injured leg had been a mistake. Harry Lee remarked that Minu was lucky not to have been hurt worse after crashing at such speed. TJ's other two team members seemed satisfied, believing they had won. But then they looked closer and noticed someone approaching alongside Jay, carrying a red flag. This left them wondering who it could be. Their team had only 2 members, and they didn't know of anyone else on Sunny School's team. Jay had taken the lead, and there was nothing TJ could do about it. For TJ, it felt like the end. Everything was already lost. He couldn't understand why his expensive bike couldn't perform as well as his opponent's so-called junk bike. At the finish line, everyone was shocked, but soon they recognized the person with the red flag. It was the president of the Sunny School Student Council, the same person who had raced against TJ before, someone many considered not very friendly. Protests erupted, claiming it was unfair since the race had been a 2v3. As Jay crossed the finish line, his expression showed complete indifference. Meanwhile, TJ was visibly dejected, having lost once again to the same person. Jay removed his helmet and commented that it seemed the junk wasn't his bike. TJ was infuriated, taking the comment to mean that the junk was him. When TJ looked like he was about to start a fight, people reminded him that the guy wasn't even part of the team. Nobody understood why this outsider had joined Sunny School's team for the race. It didn't make sense for someone not on the team to interfere in the competition. Minu clarified that he had accepted at the start that it would be a 3v2 race, regardless of the final result. Minu added that the moment he fell off his bike, the race had already ended for them. Smiling, Minu told TJ there was no need to say all those things. Minu simply tore off the team emblem from his jacket and threw it to the ground. Everyone watched Minu's actions, with some feeling saddened and others thinking he'd gone too far. Before leaving, Minu looked back and commented that he hoped they were happy now and asked them to take care of the team. Minu cast a sad glance at a few members, but he knew there wasn't much more he could do. Jun touched Minu's shoulder, and they left together. Minu felt bad about losing. As a result, Jun had to leave the team alongside Minu. For Jun, it wasn't a big deal. They could walk away together and form a new team. Shortly after, Jay tossed a helmet toward Minu. Catching the helmet, Minu thanked Jay for his support during the race. Jay didn't respond, simply ignoring Minu, turning away, and riding off on his bike. Minu realized Jay hadn't changed at all. Harry Lee noticed something about Jay. He was riding a bike inherited from someone she knew well. Minu moved forward, though his leg still hurt significantly, and Jun offered to take him home. Minu insisted he didn't need to be treated like a child, and said his house was nearby. Despite winning the race, TJ wasn't excited. It was the second time he had felt the sting of defeat. His friends asked if he was coming with them, but TJ was lost in distant thoughts. He pondered the humiliation he had suffered, and what people would say about his defeat. Someone approached and commented on the bitter look on his face. TJ, ready to fight, stood up but restrained himself when he realized who it was. Vinny Hong asked if TJ was the fool who would try to challenge him. Seeing Vinny, TJ felt satisfied. It had been a long time since he'd seen his friend. TJ smiled and asked what Vinny was doing there. Vinny jokingly replied, asking if he wasn't allowed to be there. TJ replied that of course he didn't mean it that way. Vinny explained that he had watched the race, and it seemed Minu's leg was fine. However, TJ's friends commented that Minu was nothing more than a fool now. TJ's friends explained that they had won the race, and as agreed, Minu had left the team. Vinny joked, saying that with the cat gone, the mice had come out to play. The 3 who had competed against Minu's team seemed kind. Vinny mentioned that Minu's team was disbanded, and there was nothing left to do. Meanwhile, TJ thought that Minu wasn't even part of his team anymore. Vinny showed interest in Minu's activities, noting that Minu seemed fine based on the race. However, Vinny suggested Minu be careful with his leg. Then, Vinny added that he would be leaving his own team. This left TJ confused, not understanding what Vinny really meant. A few petals later, Minu and Jun were in front of Minu's house. Minu was despondent over losing the race and his team. Minu felt upset about being expelled from his own team, thinking, if only it weren't for my leg. At that moment, Minu's parents arrived, and Minu's gaze met his father's. Minu greeted his father, who immediately asked loudly what Minu was doing outside. Minu's father wanted to know what had happened since Minu was supposed to be studying. Minu's stepmother tried to calm things down, saying it was just a teenage thing. Noticing a cut on Minu's face, his stepmother asked how he had gotten hurt. Gently, his stepmother approached to examine the wound, asking if he had fallen off his bike. Without thinking, Minu asked his stepmother to take her hands off him. His stepmother was shocked, not expecting such a rude reaction, especially in front of Minu's father. In an attempt to discipline Minu, his father punched him and repeatedly called him a thug. Minu's father said Minu should show respect since he was the eldest son, but Minu didn't care. Minu accused his stepmother of only wanting his father's money and taking advantage of his mother's absence. Furious, Minu's father accused him of using money for his own benefit and even mentioned the bike he had bought Minu. Shouting, Minu's father demanded that his son hand over his wallet and all his credit cards. In defiance, Minu threw the wallet on the ground and said he didn't need his father's money. After hearing those words, Minu's father, even more frustrated, kicked him out of the house. Minu's twin sister, watching from the window, felt deeply saddened by the argument. Minu's twin sister retreated and quietly murmured that it was all her fault. Elsewhere, in a random corner, Minu stood near a vending machine. Sitting on a bench with his bike, Minu reflected on not having money or a place to go. That day was awful. No money, expelled from his team, and now kicked out of his house. To make matters worse, Minu watched a happy family passing by. Seeing the children's joy reminded Minu of the time spent with his sisters and mother. The happy image of his mother was the only thing bringing Minu comfort during those tough days. Minu and his twin sister had been very close, and he still remembered his promise to take care of his sisters and mother. Back then, Minu was a kind and happy young man, living in a home filled with love. But now, all Minu could do was sit on that bench near his bike and cry. Tears constantly filled his eyes, leaving him in a complicated state. He heard someone nearby taking an energy drink from the vending machine. Looking over, he saw the person staring at him and sarcastically asked if Minu was crying like a baby over losing. Minu responded that he definitely wasn't crying. The guy gave him a skeptical look, clearly doubting his words. After that, the guy turned his back and walked away. However, Minu needed to ask him for a favor. When Minu managed to get the guy's attention, the guy asked what Minu wanted. Beaming and certain there was no other possible answer than yes, Minu asked if he could stay at the guy's house for the night. The guy simply walked off without even giving him a reply. Minu persisted, explaining it would just be for one night. He had no money and had been kicked out of his house. The guy responded that it wasn't his problem, making Minu think of him as a heartless demon. Despite this, Minu kept insisting, promising it would only be that one time. Jay, however, explained that he needed to get back to studying and suggested Minu ask another friend for help. Minu replied that he had no one else to turn to. Jay then made it clear that he wasn't the right person to help either. At that moment, Minu realized they were just schoolmates and nothing more. Faced with this harsh reality, Minu understood he was alone. He no longer had a team or a home. The few people who approached him were only interested in his family's social and financial status. No one around him genuinely cared about him. Their interest was solely in his father's wealth. People got close because they knew he was the son of a prominent businessman. Minu, out of convenience, also put on a mask when dealing with everyone. His father was always surrounded by lies and fake people. This was the reality Minu had always known. As a result, Minu also started hiding his true self, wearing countless masks. Since childhood, whenever Minu took off those masks, he found himself alone. As a child, Minu discovered a way to escape loneliness. He got a bicycle. The bicycle became his refuge, and he developed a passion for cycling, eventually forming his own cycling group. Initially, the group was made up of people who simply enjoyed cycling. It was called Team Zephyrus. Unfortunately, Minu lost even his team, and his situation worsened when it started to rain. Out of the corner of his eye, Minu noticed a cat, also caught in the rain and trembling from the cold. Upon closer observation, Minu realized he had seen that cat before. He tried to confirm if it was the same one that had caused him to fall once. For a moment, Minu felt anger toward the animal, but that emotion quickly faded when he saw its injured paw. Compassion overtook Minu. Blaming the cat wouldn't change anything, so he shared some of his food with it. Minu noticed the feline was gentle, eating straight from his hand. Upon closer examination, Minu realized the cat couldn't leave because of its injured paw. Minu picked up the wet, shivering cat in his arms and realized it too was alone, just like him. Nearby, a boy with glasses and an umbrella was heading home. When the boy arrived, he found a strange young man standing in the rain in front of his house. The boy recognized Minu as one of the idiots who hung out with his brother, but couldn't understand what Minu was doing there. Minu also recognized the boy and sarcastically asked if he was that little pest from before. However, the boy's attention was focused on the cat, which seemed to be the true priority. Inside the house, the boy reflected while watching the rain. Moved by the situation, the boy grabbed an umbrella and went out to check on the young man. To his surprise, the boy saw his brother coming inside with the cat in his arms. Curious, the boy asked where the cat had come from. His brother explained that the animal had been shivering in the rain, so he brought it inside. Hearing this, Minu started to feel some sympathy for the boy, who showed genuine concern. However, the boy clarified that he couldn't leave the cat out in the cold, and had only brought Minu along because they were together. Minu realized it was a mistake to expect too much from that irritating kid. Jay, on the other hand, observed his brother as he carefully cleaned the cat and got food for it. Then Jay found himself face to face with Minu, who was now inside his house. Minu told Jay Jay he would leave as soon as the rain stopped, then remained quiet. Suddenly, a towel was tossed over Minu's head. Jay gestured toward the bathroom and told Minu to take a shower. Though surprised, Minu seemed to appreciate the gesture, even if he didn't show much reaction. Jay quickly added that this was just for today, and that Minu shouldn't expect anything more from him. Even so, Jay's younger brother found it strange to let Minu sleep in their house, though Minu insisted he wasn't homeless. After his shower, Minu felt refreshed. There was nothing better than a warm shower and a clean house. Minu announced he was hungry and, without hesitation, opened the fridge to look for food. At that moment, Minu heard footsteps and a woman asking about a bike outside that she didn't recognize. When she entered the kitchen, Jay's mother was surprised to see Minu rummaging through the fridge. Startled, Minu politely greeted the lady. Upon seeing Minu, the woman realized who he was, the son of one of the town's prominent figures. She quickly prepared a meal for him. She asked Minu to make himself at home. Minu was pleased, as fried chicken with sauce was his favorite. Pleased, Jay's mother asked him how he had managed to make such a valuable friend. Jay simply replied that they weren't friends. Jay's younger brother then reminded their mother that she always said friends were useless. Trying to silence him, Jay's mother threw a chicken drumstick at her younger son. She told her younger son to finish eating quickly and go study as exams were coming up. Suddenly, Jay's mother heard a meow. Looking toward the stairs, she saw a cat and asked where it had come from. Jay's younger brother, already scolded, noticed Minu's reaction and pointed at him, saying it was Minu's fault for bringing the cat in. Quickly, Jay's younger brother placed all the blame on Minu and ran to hug the cat, which had already been named Jack. Jay and his mother realized that the boy had already given the animal a name. Trying to be subtle, Jay's mother smiled and told her younger son it would be better to return the cat once their guest left. But the boy, with his mouth messy from sauce and still hugging the cat, pretended everything would go as his mother wanted. Noticing the slightly injured faces of Jay and Minu, the woman asked if they had been in a fight. Jay, to avoid answering, quickly drank some soda, keeping himself from speaking. The responsibility fell on Minu, who stammered, saying he and Jay had fought with some boys. Jay's mother became furious, saying she would go after those responsible, as no one could insult someone so valuable. She wanted to know which school the boys were from, but Minu said he wasn't sure since they were wearing casual clothes. Minu tried to calm her down, assuring her it wouldn't happen again. Jay quietly stood up, thanked his mother for dinner, and went to his room, watched by Minu and his mother. Jay's mother commented that Jay's grades were dropping. She also said that if this continued, Jay wouldn't be allowed to ride his bike anymore. Jay simply replied that he understood and left for his room. Minu entered shortly after, as he would be sleeping there. Upon noticing Jay on the computer, Minu asked what Jay was doing. Jay just glanced at Minu and didn't answer. Soon after, Minu was already lying on the bed, commenting that he was so full and the bed was very soft. Almost asleep, Minu said he thought Jay's life wasn't easy either, as his mother pressured him to be the best in class. But Minu added that he envied Jay, because Jay had a mother who was present and spoiled him like that. Jay turned off the light and used his feet to try to push the intruder off his bed. Minu insisted he couldn't sleep without a bed and suggested they could share it. Annoyed, Jay made a spot on the floor for himself to sleep. Surprisingly, Jay struck up a conversation asking when Minu started cycling. Minu replied that it was during childhood, when he saw a boy riding in the park and thought it looked fun. Minu also mentioned that the boy must be really good at it today. That's when Minu got the idea of forming a cycling team together. Jay told Minu to stop talking nonsense and sleep because Minu was being a bother. Minu thought Jay was always like that and said Jay should be more positive sometimes. Minu also mentioned he would be staying for a few more days. This caught Jay's attention, and Jay got up to ask what Minu was talking about. Minu explained that Jay's mother had said Minu could stay as long as he needed. The situation didn't sit well with Jay. Minu turned to face the corner and sent a message to his sister, asking her to bring more clothes. Minu told his sister he was fine, that he was at Jay's house and would be sleeping there. His sister asked for the address to bring the clothes. Soon after, sleep overcame Minu, and he drifted off. In the morning, the smell of something cooking in the kitchen piqued Minu's interest. Still sleepy, Minu went to check what was going on. With blurry vision, Minu thought he saw an elderly woman cooking. When Minu fully woke up, he realized it was Jay, wearing a cat print apron. Jay explained that his mother had left early for work. Minu couldn't contain his laughter, finding the scene hilarious. He asked if it was some kind of cosplay. Minu jokingly said he needed to take a picture and post it on social media, but he laughed so hard he couldn't focus to take the photo. Minu then asked about Jay's younger brother, who was outside playing with Jack. Minu found it strange that the boy was up early to play with the cat. Seeing the dish Jay was preparing, Minu thought it was a special breakfast in his honor. Minu was already holding a spoon when he realized the food wasn't for him. Minu questioned where Jay was taking the food, and Jay replied that it was for the cat. Minu complained, saying he was starving, and that Jay shouldn't give his food to the cat. Jay in turn told Minu to prepare his own breakfast. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, Sunny High's principal was getting ready for another workday. His phone rang, and he wondered who could be calling so early. Hearing the voice of Shelly, his granddaughter, he felt proud and wanted to know how she was. Shelly said she was returning to Korea and wanted to see him. The principal replied, smiling, that he couldn't wait. Shelly confirmed she would call upon arrival. rival. The beautiful blonde girl with a bike in her room seemed to share the same interest in cycling. Early in the morning, Minu was taking care of his bike, checking the finer details. Minu was surprised by the arrival of his sister Yuna, who brought the clothes he had asked for the previous day. Yuna asked what Minu was doing. Minu replied that he was just fixing the bike since it got wet the day before. Yuna, who had a certain annoyance with her brother's bike, handed him the bag of clothes and told him to stop being stubborn and go back home. Yuna said she would take care of their father, but Minu still didn't seem convinced. Surprised, Yuna commented that she found it strange Minu preferred staying at Jay's house, and she also didn't expect Jay to be so nice to him. Minu explained that despite Jay being stubborn, things were going well. Yuna offered him a ride in the family car to school, but Minu, proud as ever, refused. Minu said he would go by bike and suggested that Yuna should start cycling too. Ignoring the advice, Yuna said she would see him later and told him not to be late. Yuna got in the car and went to school, leaving behind the image of her brother with his bike. As Minu waved goodbye, Kei, who had been there all along, asked if Yuna was his girlfriend. Only then did Minu notice the boy's presence. Indignant, Minu replied that he would never have such an ugly girlfriend and explained that she was his sister. Then he asked how long Kei had been there. Kei, ignoring the question, started talking to the cat, Jack, and remarked that it was obvious Minu, a delinquent crashing at someone else's house, couldn't have a girlfriend. Minu thought that if Kei were his brother, he would have taught him a lesson by now. Smiling, Kei said goodbye to the cat, stating he had to go to school and asking Jack to watch over the house. Minu stayed behind with the cat. Meanwhile, Jay, who was getting ready for school, ignored Minu but gave him a glance when called. Minu asked if Jay would ride his bike to school. Jay replied that he wasn't sure and asked why. Minu said he was out of bus money and would ride his bike, suggesting they go together since it would be more fun. Jay just looked at him without responding. Soon, the two were on the bike path. Unaccustomed to using it, Minu complained about how poorly planned it was, full of obstacles like trees and fire extinguishers. Jay, on the other hand, was indifferent since he was used to riding there. Minu suggested they pass through the park, a calmer route. Minu even proposed ditching class to keep cycling, but Jay's expression made it clear the idea wouldn't fly. Minu also noticed Jay wasn't wearing a helmet and offered to get him one. Shortly after, Minu remembered he had no money and dropped the idea. Jay, used to his friend's stories, told him to stop talking nonsense and keep pedaling. Minu suggested a race to school, but Jay declined, saying he could compete with himself. At school, the environment was as usual, noisy, filled with voices. Mia seemed impressed by something Yuna was saying. Mia commented that she'd never imagined seeing Minu and Jay getting along so well. Yuna agreed, saying it seemed like they had only recently started liking each other. Mia found Yuna's phrasing funny and joked that she should be careful since others might interpret it the wrong way. Yuna reminded Mia about the student council meeting over the weekend, which would be held at a cafe. Mia liked the idea, but asked if Jay would allow the meeting to take place outside the school. Yuna explained that, with most department heads being girls, they could pressure Jay into agreeing. Satisfied, Mia commented that it would be her chance for a date with her beloved Jay. Yuna made it clear she was helping Mia, but she needed to ensure they ended up alone in the end. Embarrassed, Mia said she didn't need that much help. Overhearing their conversation, Dom Kang suggested he might show up at the meeting and asked if he could join. Annoyed, Yuna reminded him he wasn't even on the council, asking what he intended to do there. Dom Kang offered to be her assistant, but Yuna simply told him to stop being silly. He insisted, inviting her to watch a zombie movie after the meeting. Mia, observing from a distance, thought the two looked good together. However, Yuna made it clear she didn't like that type of movie. Just then, Mia looked out the window and saw Jay and Minu arriving on their bikes. She commented to Yuna about her desire to buy a bike, noting the great weather lately. Yuna suggested that when Mia bought her bike, she should ask Jay to teach her how to ride it. Dom Kang, once again butting in, declared he would also buy a bike, but Yuna simply replied that she didn't care. As Minu entered the school with his bike, he caught the attention of the girls, as always. Meanwhile, in a corner, two boys were engrossed in a magazine featuring beautiful girls. The class leader arrived, interrupting their fun, stating she needed to keep everything organized. Annoyed, the two boys couldn't do anything. It was then that they noticed Minu entering the room with his bicycle, parking it in a corner. Curious, one of the boys asked Minu why he had brought the bicycle inside. Minu responded by asking if he had any idea of the bicycle's value, explaining he couldn't possibly leave it outside. When the boy asked how much it cost, he was shocked by the amount Minu mentioned. He thought the price was absurd, commenting that the bike might as well be made of gold. Even so, the boy expressed a desire to ride the bicycle, but upon noticing its very high seat, he gave up, frustrated. In Jay's class, Yuna appeared to discuss the upcoming student council meeting. She informed him everyone wanted it to be at a cafe and asked for his thoughts. Jay didn't seem to like the idea, but Yuna decided it would be that way regardless and left, humming a tune. Later, Yuna informed Mia that everything had gone as planned, urging her to dress well to make a good impression. Just imagining the situation made Mia blush, worried since she wasn't used to dressing up. In her room, Mia faced a dilemma. What outfit would be ideal for an event as special as the cafe meeting? With several pieces scattered across the bed, she tried on one after another in front of the mirror. struggling to decide. Her hair and makeup were also a concern. Her moment of doubt was interrupted by the sudden sound of her phone. It was her friend Yuna calling to ask if she was ready, as she was already on her way to pick her up. Desperate, Mia replied that she'd be ready in just a few minutes. With no time to prepare as she'd hoped, she quickly grabbed a dress she thought was appropriate and did her best with the little time she had. Meanwhile, at Jay's house, the atmosphere was quiet. Minu, bored, complained about having no money and no fun on a weekend. Outside, he watched couples walking by and Kay, who seemed obsessed with cats. When he saw Jay getting ready to leave, Minu asked where he was going. Jay explained he was going to a student council meeting. Surprised, Minu questioned why anyone would have a meeting on the weekend and asked to tag along, citing his boredom. Jay refused, stating he preferred to go alone. Disappointed, Minu held the door, promising to take care of the house and asking Jay to bring back something nice like ice cream. Jay just looked at him without replying. At the cafe where the meeting was scheduled, the atmosphere was calm, with a few people scattered at tables. One couple, in particular, seemed to be enjoying themselves, but at Yuna's table, the mood was more uncomfortable. Yuna noticed Dom Kang nearby, enthusiastically praising the cafe's bagels. A little late, Mia arrived, embarrassed, explaining she hadn't expected everyone to already be there. Her different, more polished appearance initially confused Dom Kang, as he didn't recognize her. This made Mia even more self-conscious, until she mentioned he should recognize her by her voice. Yuna got excited seeing Mia without her glasses, suggesting she should wear contact lenses more often. Mia thanked her for the compliments, explaining it was just a temporary change. One of the guys at the meeting, while flirting with his girlfriend, commented on how stunning Mia looked without glasses. His girlfriend, however, scolded him, calling him a pig. Dom Kang, observing the couple, asked Yuna if she'd like to fight with him like that too, but Yuna ignored him. At another table, Vinny was visibly annoyed. His friends were commenting on a group that was staring at them judgmentally. Vinny noticed the people at the other table were talking about his appearance, particularly his left eye of a different color, insinuating it was a contact lens or cosplay. Tired of the jokes, Vinny had the brilliant idea to stand up and confront the group. Vinny grabbed one of their coffee cups, pretended to take a sip, and then complained that the coffee was sour. This drew everyone's attention. Vinny then asked the group if his eye color was so strange that it made them uncomfortable. He even sarcastically suggested they pluck out his eye to check if it was real. The guys at the table were taken aback, asking him to stop. But Vinny, in a friendly tone, kicked their table, causing a commotion and making one of them fall off their chair. The ruckus caught the attention of Dom Kang, who was with his friends. Vinny continued pressuring the group, putting his foot on one of the fallen guys and asking if he wanted to hear more. Vinny then accidentally spilled hot coffee on another guy, though he claimed it was unintentional. A girl in the group asked for help to break up the commotion, but no one intervened, as it seemed to be just an argument. Dom Kang, seeing the hot coffee spilling, tried to hold Vinny's hand to avoid further trouble. However, Vinny didn't appreciate Dom Kang's intervention and stared at him, clearly irritated. The atmosphere grew tense as Dom Kang decided to mediate the situation. As he tried to intervene and ask for calm, Vinny continued pouring hot drinks over a guy, unintentionally spilling the rest. The guy, who had previously mocked Vinny's appearance and unusual eye and hair color, was now on the floor, backing away like a frightened dog. He begged for someone to call the police to stop that lunatic. Vinny, giving a light flick to Dom Kang's cap, asked what the problem was. Dom Kang, in turn, simply fixed his gaze on Vinny, who had just flicked his cap, but did not touch him in any way. At that moment, Yuna caught Dom Kang's attention. Hearing her voice, he turned to see what she wanted to say. Yuna asked Dom Kang to put his fists away and avoid causing trouble, at least this time. Dom Kang adjusted his hair but continued staring at Vinny, though in a different manner. Meanwhile, Vinny's friend tried to intervene to prevent the situation from escalating. In a low tone, Vinny's friend suggested that Vinny leave before things got out of hand. Vinny, always eccentric, stuck out his tongue at Dom Kang before leaving. As Vinny turned his back, he said they would finish that conversation somewhere more private. Hearing the provocations, Dom Kang bent down, picked up the cap, and placed it back on his head. Then Dom Kang walked over to Yuna and stated that he hadn't caused any trouble that day. Yuna, seemingly satisfied, didn't explicitly show her approval. She simply said he had done a good job. Elsewhere, elegant footsteps accompanied by high heels and a sophisticated suitcase stood out in the crowd. The men present couldn't help but stare, almost slack-jawed. The blonde woman, with striking beauty, drew gazes wherever she went. Even women stopped to watch her. Some couples lightly argued when their partners disrespectfully cast curious glances her way. Among those present, a confident man who considered himself attractive decided to make a move. After fixing his hair and adjusting his appearance, he commented to a friend about the European woman's beauty. Proudly, he declared that he knew enough French to get by and headed toward her, convinced his charm was enough. Before approaching her, he told his friend not to worry since his strategy was 99% charisma. Manhua and 1% basic French. The friend, skeptical, believed he needed a reality check since the blonde seemed out of his league. The woman, noticing the sidelong glances, thought about how predictable and inconvenient many men could be. When he finally approached, attempting to impress her with his French, she calmly replied that they could speak in Korean. Finding his behavior odd, she naturally answered his questions about whether she spoke Korean and where she was from. The man explained that he had been drinking coffee when he spotted an angel and felt the need to follow her. Then he asked if she had a boyfriend. Handing her his phone, he asked her to write down her number so they could communicate later. The woman took his phone and wrote something on it. As a cyclist casually pedaled by, the woman was also seen writing something on her own phone. At that moment, two men on a scooter appeared. The one in front wore an Iron Man mask. The second man indicated that their target was ahead, the blonde woman with the seemingly valuable suitcase. They sped toward the woman, who still held the man's phone in her hand. She, indifferently, handed the phone back, saying she would send a message later. The man, confident, believed she was just feigning disinterest. Nevertheless, he was sure of his success. However, when he checked the number she had supposedly written, he realized it was fake. As he examined the phone, the two men on the scooter sped by, snatching the woman's bag. With the bag as a trophy, they fled as quickly as possible. The woman, upset by the theft, tried to react, but it was useless. The cyclist, though hooded and pedaling quickly, noticed the scene. Even though he seemed in a hurry, he appeared to have a clear destination in mind. After the director's granddaughter Jay saw the cyclist pass by, following the theft committed by two men on a scooter, she rode at an extreme speed, wanting to know what he was doing. Construction workers were taking a break, smoking their cigarettes. They were startled when Jay sped past them and borrowed a worker's helmet. Now that he was properly protected, he could pedal quickly without putting his life at risk. At the cafe, the cleaning staff was organizing the space for the next customers. They thought that instead of causing a mess, the patrons could just quietly enjoy their coffee and leave. Some people watched them clean and were annoyed at the mess they had to deal with. The young man, who had been enjoying his girlfriend's affectionate attention earlier, reflected that if the situation hadn't been resolved, he would have handled it himself. Memories from his school days, when he was known as Bloody Prey, would have resurfaced. Dom Kang then stated he didn't want to fight, just to scare people a little. Despite his words, the girls were all pleased with his bravery. That wasn't how Yuna saw it. She told him he shouldn't behave like a tough guy, because that wasn't true bravery. He simply hadn't thought things through. However, Mia had something she had always wanted to ask him. She wanted to know if he was interested in revealing his feelings for her. Smiling awkwardly, she clarified that wasn't what she wanted to ask, but rather the reason he always wore a band-aid on his upper lip. He didn't find it very amusing and pointed to his upper lip, asking if that's what she was talking about. Yuna told him that someone was bound to ask about it eventually. Mia was curious and wanted to know what was hidden there, as he always covered it up. She said it would be their secret. He said he would show her, but insisted they couldn't tell anyone. Then, as he pulled off the band-aid, his secret was finally revealed. However, the sight caught the girls' attention because all this time, he had just been hiding a mustache. They thought it was strange for a high school student to already have a mustache. One of the boys at the table thought it was really cool, so much so that he imagined himself with a mustache and beard, thinking it would make him look more masculine. Mia was impressed that he was still in high school and already had a mustache. The boy at the table speculated that he might have a secret, perhaps a miraculous gel that made hair grow quickly, giving any man a more virile appearance. He begged Dom Kang to let him use it, even if just once. Dom Kang said he couldn't, as it was very hard to find in the black market. The girls couldn't understand why anyone would go through so much trouble just to grow a mustache, only to cover it with a band-aid later. He explained that the mustache was for his part-time job, as it made him look older and more serious. He said the teachers couldn't find out, or he'd have to shave it immediately. That's why he kept it hidden with the band-aid. Mia finally understood why he was always so tired in class. He got exhausted from his part-time job. One girl wanted to know what his father did for a living that would require him to do such things too. He replied that his father handled the administrative side of an organization. However, from an outsider's perspective, it didn't seem that way. He looked more like the leader of a mafia, dealing with other big shots of the same caliber. When they were all together, the situation seemed even more intimidating, but as gangsters, they had to maintain their composure. Nevertheless, his father was returning to Korea that day. The girl wanted to know if his father handled the administrative side of the organization like a regular civil employee or something similar. He just burst out laughing, trying to change the mood and the conversation. Mia, trying to escape the conversation, grabbed a ticket and said she was going to get more coffee. She got up from the table happily, ready to fetch coffee while someone started taking pictures of her. It seemed like someone had taken an interest in her appearance, as at that moment, she looked truly stunning. Elsewhere, the president of the student council was pedaling at full speed on his bike, wearing a borrowed helmet, chasing down the thieves. The men on the motorcycle thought they had hit the jackpot, but realized that someone was chasing them. They were startled to see someone pursuing them on a bicycle. They couldn't believe anyone would try to catch a motorcycle on a bike. However, when they checked the rearview mirror, they saw he was indeed trying to catch up with them. They thought he'd never be able to corner them with just a bicycle. He'd have to be more clever than that. Nonetheless, this, Jay started pedaling harder, weaving between cars to keep the motorcycle in sight. As Jay continued his bicycle pursuit of the motorcycle, whose riders had stolen the blonde woman's purse, he proved accustomed to obstacles and difficult paths. He could easily ride up ramps, jump small walls, and dodge cars. None of that was a problem for him. So taking a shortcut to intercept those criminals wouldn't be too challenging. He was so used to such situations that he now found himself riding on top of a wall. Nearby, on a court, some boys were playing and kicking a ball around. One of them kicked it hard, and the ball was headed straight for the boy riding on the wall. The little kids, amazed, thought he might be part of a bicycle attack squad, as they couldn't believe anyone could pedal on a wall. Some of them thought he was amazing, and that, given the choice, a bike was cooler than a ball. Nevertheless, he kept pedaling on the wall, using his shortcut, until he finally caught sight of the motorcycle. The motorcyclist admitted the guy had scared him for a few seconds, but he soon realized it was just nonsense. However, the motorcyclist became even more frightened when he saw the bicycle flying. After gaining momentum on the wall, the cyclist was indeed airborne. The cyclist passed over some kids who were eating ice cream. They were quite impressed to see a man flying on a bicycle. The motorcyclists were equally impressed and terrified at the same time. The children watching thought it was all amazing. It was incredible to see someone riding a bike so daringly. Although the cyclist threw the bicycle at the motorcycle to stop the criminals, the kids still found it fascinating to see a bike flying through the air. The cyclist got up, landing on some boxes along with the motorcyclists. He simply looked at the criminals, who tried to run away but left the bag behind, not wanting to be chased again. Shortly after, Chelly approached in a white car and asked how the cyclist was doing. Although he seemed to have a slight injury on his head or forehead, it was hard to tell because his helmet covered it. Chelly wanted to take him to the hospital, but he simply handed her the bag, adjusted the bicycle, and kept carrying it as the bike was in such bad condition that he couldn't ride it anymore. Even so, Chelly insisted, worried that he might be seriously hurt. Seeing it was no use, she simply thanked him for retrieving the bag. Jay took out his phone and made a call, informing someone that he wouldn't make it in time because he had been in an accident. Yuna became worried and asked if he was hurt and if there was anything she could do to help. Dom Kang, curious, asked what had happened. Yuna explained that Jay had been in a bicycle accident and said he wouldn't be able to attend the meeting. The conversation caught Mia's attention, and she asked if Jay was okay. Yuna replied that, judging by his voice, he didn't seem seriously injured, but he hadn't given many details. Someone then suggested that maybe Jay didn't want to attend the meeting and had made up an excuse. Yuna stated that Jay wasn't the type to avoid responsibilities. It was agreed that they would all stay a little longer and then leave. Mia was visibly disappointed and said she was going to the bathroom. Once there, she looked at herself in the mirror and reflected that everything seemed meaningless, though she still hoped Jay was okay. When she left the bathroom, she was approached by a guy who introduced himself as CJ Kim and said he worked for SZ magazine. He had been watching her and thought she fit the type of model they were looking for. If she was interested, she could contact him. After saying this, he handed her a card and added that she could call whenever she needed. Mia was impressed by the situation and looked at the card, surprised. Mia, Yuna, and Dom Kang said goodbye to the other part of the team, saying they would meet at school. Now, the friends talked about how unfortunate it was that Jay hadn't come since Mia had put in so much effort. Mia looked very pretty, and Yuna encouraged her to cheer up, saying there would definitely be another chance. Yuna also wanted to know who the guy Mia had been talking to in front of the bathroom was. Showing the card, Mia explained who he was. Looking at the card, Yuna commented that the fashion magazine was very famous, so the guy surely had good intentions. Meanwhile, Minu, at Jay's house, was watching a music show while the cat played with a ball on the floor near him. Hugging a pillow on the floor, Minu thought it was very boring to stay home alone. At the same time, Jay was walking, carrying his bicycle to get it repaired, when he entered a specialty shop. Politely, he excused himself. In front of him was a girl with a military cap and some tattoos. The girl, friendly and wearing a white tank top, welcomed him. Jay explained he was there to fix his bike. She then remembered him from race day and asked if he remembered her, since she had watched the race footage. However, she noticed he had no idea what she was talking about. It seemed Jay had a knack for forgetting people and things. Jay was there to fix the bike, but she decided to administer first aid since he had a small cut on his forehead. He wasn't pleased, as he wanted her to fix his bike as quickly as possible, without worrying about him. Jay said he knew what her job was, but insisted the bike should be the priority, even after she tended to his injury. Looking at the bike, she realized it was really damaged. The fork and the front wheel were completely unusable. At least the bike frame was still intact, which was a relief considering Jay had crashed the bike while trying to chase away the thieves. Even though the girl was very pretty, and her tank top highlighted her tattoos, Jay wasn't focused on that, but rather on the photo of his uncle on the wall. That photo brought back old memories, specifically of the final stage of the Tour de France, which was nearing its end. Jay remembered watching that epic race on his computer, and for the first time in history, a Korean cyclist was in the lead. Then came the English athlete, speeding up behind him. Mark advanced and overtook the Korean cyclist in an instant. The two were sprinting toward the finish line, and Jay recalled his uncle's words, telling him that if he had a dream, he he should go after it. At that time, young Jay said he wanted to be a doctor, but his uncle insisted the dream should be his own, not his parents'. The boy retorted, saying he couldn't be more than a student, and all he could do was study to please his parents. The uncle also commented that studying wasn't a real dream. It was too boring to be just a dream. Studying was important, but finding something you truly enjoyed and living life was even better. Those words made Jay wish to find something he could truly enjoy, so he asked his uncle if he had a dream. Smiling, the uncle replied that his dream was to be on top of the world in cycling. Jay's uncle thought it might not be possible, but he wanted it so badly, and believed that with dedication, nothing was impossible. On the day of that race, Jay's uncle became the first Korean cyclist in history to win that final stage. Jay remembered watching the race when his parents asked if he still had his computer on, reminding him he had homework and needed to sleep early. Jay recalled turning off the computer with a peaceful mind, thinking his uncle had made it and that nothing in the world was impossible. The memories of his youth faded as Harry asked Jay if he knew the cyclist, noting that he wasn't very famous in Korea. In Korea, cycling was taken very seriously, and Jay's uncle was a national cyclist, having won first place in several Asian competitions. Harry also mentioned that he had won the final stage of the Tour de France, every cyclist's dream, Ma and Joe. Then Harry looked at Jay and asked if he knew that cyclist. Jay replied that Ma and Joe was his uncle. Harry had already suspected as much, because she recognized the bike Jay used for training on asphalt before becoming a cyclist. She also noticed the name on the bike, as cyclists often name their bikes, and she showed Jay the inscription. The bike was named Manhua. That's when Jay asked how Harry knew his uncle. Harry said she admired Manhua so much that she became the leader of a fan club created exclusively for him. Then, Harry started thinking about how to repair the bike. She knew she would need to replace the entire front part, and suggested Jay return in 2 days. Jay didn't seem happy about leaving the bike behind, but agreed to come back later. Harry then asked him to wait a moment. She handed Jay a flyer, saying he might be interested in joining the Street League since they were organizing a long-distance championship. The first-place winner would receive a prize of 100,000 won and the chance to participate in an international championship. Jay flatly refused, but Harry said that if he changed his mind and wanted to participate with his friends, he could get in touch. Jay firmly stated that he had exams next month and couldn't participate. Harry smiled and said that was fine, but Jay should come back to pick up the bike and also visit the hospital. Jay left and started walking, seeming to search for something in his pocket, when he realized he had dropped his wallet. At home, feeling bored, Jay was listening to music, unaware that he had lost his wallet. Shelley's grandfather was very happy to arrive and see that his favorite granddaughter was there. He mentioned how much he missed her. While Shelley rummaged through Jay's wallet, she noticed he was a student at a school. Shelley asked her grandfather if she could enroll in the same school where Jay studied, as she intended to study there for a while. Minu was startled by Jay's appearance when he saw his bruised face, so much so that Minu asked if Jay had been in an accident. Annoyed and with few words, Jay simply replied that he had had an accident. Minu asked how Jay managed to get hurt every single day and where he had left the bike. Jay replied that he had left it at the repair shop. That's when Minu noticed the bike had also sustained some damage. Minu felt sad, realizing that Jay wouldn't be able to ride with him for a while. Frustrated, Minu understood he would have to go to school alone the next day. Meanwhile, Jay's younger brother slept peacefully on the living room carpet next to his friend Jack. The next day, at school, everyone surrounded Jay, asking if he had been badly hurt in the accident. Dom Kang, who already considered himself a friend of Jay, asked if Jay was feeling okay since everyone had been worried about him at the cafe the previous day. Dom Kang made it clear that Minu, in particular, had been very concerned. Standing nearby and hearing Dom Kang's words, Minu quickly placed her hand over his mouth, stopping him from saying more. Yuna wanted Jay to be straightforward and explain what had happened on the way to the cafe. Jay, who didn't like being bothered, replied that it was nothing serious and that they could forget it and return to studying. The teacher arrived and asked everyone to sit down because he had an announcement to make. He asked for everyone's attention, requesting silence to hear what he had to say. He announced that from that moment, there would be a new exchange student at their school. He told Shelley to come in and not be shy, as everyone was waiting for her. That's when the blonde, with confident steps, entered the classroom. Everyone fell silent, admiring Shelley's unmatched beauty. The teacher explained that Shelley was from England and had been transferred to their school. He mentioned that she would only be in Korea for 1 semester and asked everyone to help and be friendly with her. He asked Shelley to give a brief introduction. She introduced herself as Shelley and said she enjoyed traveling and cycling. The class went wild, believing an angel had fallen into their classroom. Yuna, on the other hand, was surprised by her classmates' pathetic behavior. Yuna still felt unsettled by the boys' actions. Dom Kang thought the girl was beautiful, but he didn't find her as attractive as Yuna. However, Yuna's target wasn't the slightest bit interested in the criticisms, compliments, or comments. Instead, she found the source of all the commotion. She noticed the director crouched down, observing the classroom to ensure his granddaughter would integrate well with the group. He realized that this room was full of wolves, all with their eyes on his little Shelley. The director was interrupted by the janitor, who noticed he was spying. In the classroom, the teacher looked for the best place to seat Shelley. Showing her confidence, Shelley said she would find a place to sit on her own. Avoiding her target. Shelly identified the perfect spot and walked past him. Realizing he hadn't even noticed her, Shelly kissed him on the cheek, leaving everyone stunned. Mia, in turn, was shocked and saddened, while the boys were impressed that the girl had just arrived and already kissed someone. The director was furious about his granddaughter's behavior and thought the boy shouldn't dare kiss her back. The janitor had to intervene and take the director elsewhere, as his behavior was inappropriate. The teacher also reprimanded this strange behavior in the school. Jay, startled by Shelly's kiss, wiped his face and asked what she was doing. Shelly explained that she hadn't had the chance to thank him when he retrieved her bag from the Imaginext line. Shelly handed him his wallet, which he had dropped, and said she had kept it safe for him. Looking firmly at the boy next to Jay, Shelly said she wanted to sit there and asked if he would mind pointing out the seat. The boy, feeling intimidated, replied that he didn't mind, and that it would be rude not to offer Shelly a seat. Yuna realized Jay had missed the previous day's meeting because of Shelly. Mia was upset, feeling that the kiss in front of the whole class was unnecessary. June was looking at the race flyer when Minu rushed past him. June wanted to know where Minu was going in such a hurry. Minu replied that they'd talk later because he had just learned that a new exchange student was in the class. June wanted to share something important with his friend, but Minu didn't even listen. Everyone was talking about how that nerd had kissed a blonde angel. However, June wanted to tell Minu about the race flyer, but decided to let it go for now. He'd share later that apparently Jay was entering the tournament they both loved. Minu arrived breathless at the classroom, looking for the nerd who had kissed the blonde angel. However, Jay's desk was already surrounded by boys asking where he had met such a beautiful girl and how they knew each other. The girls were looking at Shelly and commenting on her hair, asking how she knew Jay. Shelly, glancing in Jay's direction, saw Minu waving at her and saying he was from class 3. Shelly replied that this was what she meant to say, and that it was a pleasure to meet him. Minu then approached Jay, placing a hand on his shoulder, and said he needed to talk to him. Jay, however, replied that Minu should come back later because he was busy. Minu grabbed Jay's arm, insisting he stop lying and just say what he wanted, even if it was just for a minute. Meanwhile, Shelly was watching the two of them. Minu then asked Jay how long they had been together and why he was getting involved with Shelly so quickly. Jay, without hesitation, replied that he wasn't with Shelly. Minu thought Jay was joking and pressed him to explain what really happened. Jay said that Shelly suddenly appeared and kissed him out of nowhere. Minu found it strange that Shelly had kissed Jay for no reason and asked how Jay hadn't mentioned her before, especially since they were living together. Everyone around them began jumping to conclusions, thinking Jay had betrayed Minu with Shelly. Minu, trying to preserve his masculinity, explained that everyone had misunderstood. As a representative of the school newspaper, one student took a photo to document the moment. Meanwhile, a boy with orange hair walked by and smelled Shelly's blonde hair. Shelly gently slapped his face to keep him away. Mia, who had been watching everything, stood up, almost unable to believe what was happening. Mia was deeply upset, and the chatter of the students around her wasn't helping. Mia remembered when she was bullied at school, especially by her friends and classmates. Mia recalled one specific day when they went too far, throwing her books on the floor and breaking her glasses. Mia was devastated because her glasses were expensive and she couldn't go without them. It was then that Jay approached Mia and asked about her glasses prescription. When Mia answered, he said they had the same prescription and offered Mia his spare glasses. He gave Mia the extra pair he always carried since he frequently broke his glasses, and that's how Mia met Jay in middle school. Mia knew Jay wasn't good at interacting with people and rarely showed his emotions, but he was kinder than anyone else. That was the moment Mia began to like him. It was very difficult for Mia to express her feelings, especially after all the bullying she had endured since middle school. This had caused her to lose confidence in herself and began to resent her own interactions with the world. After class ended, Jay was walking out calmly when a voice he was tired of hearing called out to him. It was Minu, holding up the flyer June had given him, who called Jay a nerd and asked for updates on his teeth. The flyer was about a race, and Minu mentioned that the prize was 100 million won, a significant sum, especially since Minu currently had no money. Trying to be persuasive, Minu asked Jay to form a group to participate, suggesting they could earn some money. Jay, as firm as ever, said he wasn't interested and asked Minu to stop bothering him. Minu insisted, saying that if they participated, they might even end up on TV and become famous. Shelly watched from a distance, observing Jay and Minu as Minu tried to persuade him to join. When Shelly was about to shout and ask to go with Jay, her grandfather appeared. He asked her where she thought she was going. Shelly explained that she wanted to go out with a friend, but her grandfather grabbed her by the hood, telling her the friend could wait because he wanted to see her first. Her grandfather questioned what she was plotting and insisted she go home with him. Shelly was upset because she wanted to follow Jay, but her grandfather took her away. When Jay got home, he took a shower and was preparing to study when Minu showed up again with the flyer. Minu suggested that if Jay fixed the bike, they could join the race together. However, Jay didn't want to hear about it anymore. The TV was on, airing an interview interview with an Asian cycling representative. It was Sancho Choi, set to participate in a cycling festival in the Street League. Minhu was already familiar with Sancho Choi's fame, knowing he was the greatest cyclist in Korea and would be competing. When asked about the competition, Sancho Choi replied that he would race the final stretch with the amateur team that won. Meanwhile, Jae and Jun were arguing over the remote control, while Minhu wanted to keep watching the interview. They talked about Ma Han-jo, an Asian cycling hero who had passed away 2 years earlier, a victim of an accident that occurred after a doping test. Sancho Choi mourned the death of Ma Han-jo, mentioning that if Ma Han-jo were still alive, he would have had to end his career due to doping issues. Jae, hearing this, remembered Ma Han-jo's kind and gentle face and felt a pang of sadness upon hearing Sancho's words. He also condemned the use of doping to enhance performance and hoped other cyclists wouldn't follow the same path. Meanwhile, Minhu and Jae were fighting over the remote control until Jae suddenly stood up and announced he would join the competition. Minhu was perplexed, thinking he had misheard. Late at night in a square, there were three: Jae, Minhu, and Jun. Jun asked Jae if he was really joining the team with them. Jae replied that he was, especially after hearing Sancho Choi say those things about his uncle. He couldn't just ignore it. Minhu asked Jae what had caused him to change his mind so suddenly. Jae remembered the interview and grew angry, but wasn't about to tell his friends what was going on. Minhu wanted to know if it was because of the prize money or the international competition. But for Jae, nothing was more important than clearing his uncle's name and proving to Sancho Choi that Ma and Jo didn't use doping. Jun thought that regardless of the reason, it was good to know Jae would be participating with them. Now they had a situation to resolve. They still didn't have enough members to call it a team. Minhu thought the members of his old team might also join and end up facing them. Jun told Minhu to forget about that. It was in the past. Now they could create their own team. Minhu was tasked with coming up with a name for their new team. Jun agreed, saying they needed a name. Jun asked what the two had in mind. Jae remained silent, while Minhu seemed to be thinking. That's when Minhu had the brilliant idea of naming the team Super Cool, but Jun thought it was too childish. Then they considered Super Other Team, Giant Team, maybe Tiger Team, or even Legendary Team. Jun thought the discussion wasn't going anywhere, so they decided to resolve it the next day. Jae thought the devil must be on the same team as that clueless guy, Minhu. Minhu really wanted the team to be called Super Cool because he thought it was an awesome name. In the classroom the next day, the English lesson continued. Meanwhile, Minhu was struggling to come up with a good name for their team. He was finding it incredibly difficult, something he had never experienced before. During the break, the three of them gathered to brainstorm names, and Minhu showed the draft he had made the night before. Minhu declared that there was no alternative but to go with Team Super Cool. Jae, losing patience, said he wouldn't accept such a dumb name. Minhu asked what name Jae suggested. Jae replied, anything but Super Cool. Minhu was outraged because he thought it was a great name and Jae wasn't even trying to come up with something else. At that moment, Shelly appeared behind Jae, who, still indifferent to her, continued to ignore her presence. When she heard about the bike team, she got interested and wanted to join, thinking it was a super cool idea. Jun politely told the blonde girl that the competition could be dangerous for a girl. Minhu, however, immediately welcomed her, saying that of course she could join because she was beautiful and always welcome. He added that all she needed to know was how to ride a bike, and he would handle the rest. Annoyed, the girl replied that she could ride very well. Mia had been very upset ever since she saw the new girl in class exchange kisses with Jae. Her friend Yuna tried to cheer her up, asking why she had been so down since the other day. Mia tried to hide her feelings, claiming she wasn't feeling well. Then Dom Kang butted into their conversation. He suggested all she needed was some energy, adding that listening to good hip-hop would make her feel better. Shelly joined the discussion about the team name, which led Minhu to suggest the goddess and her minions. Jun noticed that his friend got even sillier whenever a girl was around. Overhearing their conversation, Dom Kang asked why they kept going out without him. He sounded so disappointed, saying he thought they were friends. Dom Kang added that after that night in the room, he thought he and Jae would never be apart again. Mia, seeing her beloved Jae surrounded by the new girl and her friends, grew even sadder. Mia stood frozen as the girl integrated into the group, something Mia had always wished she could do herself. Yuna noticed her friend looking more downcast than usual. Meanwhile, Dom Kang was throwing a fit because he wanted to join the bike team too. The blonde girl just stared at Minhu. Now, the five of them were together trying to decide on a team name. Minhu wanted to know why Dom Kang was still hanging around. Dom Kang replied that he was there because he was also going to be part of the team. Someone then asked if he even had a bike. Dom Kang explained he was planning to get a used one from an online site. Minhu told him they could talk more after he bought the bike. Since they were from the same school, they thought they could name the team after their school. But the idea wasn't accepted, it seemed a bit silly. Shelly commented that they were terrible at choosing names. While Shelly's grandfather kept an eye on what she was doing with the four boys, Minhu still hadn't given up on naming the group Super Cool. Shelly's grandfather, the school principal, was annoyed because she was hanging around boys again. But seeing Shelly smile, he realized realized it had been a long time since he'd seen her that happy. As Shelley's grandfather sipped his juice, a hummingbird flew near Dom Kang. The little hummingbird was bothering both Dom Kang and Minu, who initially thought it was an insect. Someone suggested it might be a hummingbird, but June explained that there were no hummingbirds in Korea. June suggested it might be a hawk moth, as many people confuse them because they look similar. He mentioned that the hummingbird flaps its wings faster than any other bird, at least 90 times per second, and is excellent at acrobatics. Minu thought flapping wings 90 times per second was incredible. Even as he argued with Dom Kang not to take his smoothie, Minu then wondered, how fast could someone pedal a bike 90 times per second? Probably faster than a motorcycle. He imagined himself pedaling as fast as a hummingbird. Minu's musings then caught the attention of June, Jay, and Shelley. Dom Kang wanted to know what a hummingbird had to do with the situation. Meanwhile, the poster advertising the race was circulating in various places, catching the attention of many people. Several notable personalities were interested in participating, while others, simply deluded, thought they could win with a bike called Sina Chan. The news also reached TJ, who found it all very interesting. Staying behind in the classroom, Mia and Jay were erasing what was left on the board. Mia then asked Jay if he was really dating the exchange student. Jay didn't like the question and asked Mia what she was talking about. Mia, a bit embarrassed, explained that it was what everyone at school was saying, that they were dating, and she was just curious. Jay replied that they weren't dating, and asked who was spreading such nonsense. Mia said knowing that was a relief, as it seemed they were forming a team or something similar. Jay explained it was a cycling team. Mia thought it was cool and sounded fun, asking what the team's name was. Jay said they decided to call it Hummingbird. Mia thought the name was adorable. She asked if they had already designed a logo or emblem. If not, she could make one for them. Mia explained that she wanted to become a designer after graduation, so if Jay liked it, she could create something for them. Jay told Mia that if she wanted to try, she could make something for him. Smiling and blushing, Mia said it would be great. Jay told Mia to finish quickly because he wanted to leave. Later, Mia told Jay she planned to buy a bike soon and asked if he could teach her to ride when he had free time. Jay said he would teach her when he had some free time. The girl was delighted with Jay's response. After leaving school, Jay went straight to the bike shop to pick up the bike he had left for repair. Harry told him he was later than she had expected. At Dom Kang's house, Dom Kang announced his arrival. His father called him over to have a drink with the old man, but Dom Kang replied that he was tired and had to work soon. His father said Dom Kang could at least act a little happy to see him, or he would feel sad. He then asked if Dom Kang was dating multiple girls at school. Dom Kang, the boy, said, of course not. His father said that when he was Dom Kang's age, he wasn't as serious and always knew how to enjoy life. One of his men asked the father to stop bothering Dom Kang and return to eating. That's when Dom Kang asked his father to buy him a bike so he could exercise. His father found it strange that Dom Kang suddenly wanted a bike, then asked how much bikes cost these days. One of the men replied that at least 50,000 won would get a decent one. Dom Kang's father agreed to give that much, handing the money to his son and telling him to buy a decent bike. Hearing the amount, Dom Kang thought his father was joking. Where would I find a bike that cheap? He wondered. He found it ridiculous and didn't know what he would do to buy a bike for only 50,000 won. Dom Kang found a new bicycle on a website for 100,000 won. He thought it was suspicious that there were no pictures, but he figured he should buy it for himself. One of the henchmen suggested he send a message to the seller. Shy, Dom Kang thought about asking for a discount, requesting half the price. Then he wondered if this could be a scam. The henchman said no one would try such a blatant scam, but if the seller ran off with the money, he would take care of it. However, the seller quickly replied to the message, agreeing to the 50,000 won discount. Now, Dom Kang felt very lucky. He could join the team. On the other side, the seller assumed he was dealing with a middle or high school student, given the lack of money. At least the scammer had already pocketed the cash from the fool who had just sent it. The scammer was also confident the kid wouldn't report it to the police over something trivial like a bike. Meanwhile, Harry, the girl at the bike shop, was pleased that Jay had decided to join the competition with those boys. She said it was great and hoped they would create good memories together. She advised Jay to take good care of the bike since the chain was a mess, given that his uncle had handed it down to him. She reminded him to keep it in good condition. Harry shared that it had taken a while to gather all the individual parts and that the 7 front wheels Jay had used before had been destroyed. She explained that the carbon wheels were lighter than regular ones, which would make the bike lighter. However, she warned that if a carbon wheel cracked, it could completely ruin the wheel, so Jay shouldn't ride recklessly. She emphasized that it wasn't indestructible just because it was made of carbon. Jay asked how much the parts and repairs would cost. Harry replied that those 7 wheels had been pulled from a dusty corner, so he could keep them. As for the repairs, Jay could pay her after winning the competition. She hoped they would secure first place, especially for his uncle's sake after the doping incident. With that, Harry made it clear she knew this was Jay's reason for wanting to participate. Meanwhile, Vinny's friend told him to stop living like a pig. He pointed out that school was already over, it was nighttime, and Vinny shouldn't be sleeping all day. Opening one eye, Vinny asked what time it was. His friend told him it was already 8 p.m. and that since he wasn't dead, he should get up and do something. Since Vinny hadn't gone to school or answered his phone, the friend had come over, worried, only to find him sleeping. Vinny's friend told him he had a note from Vinny's mother, who had apparently stopped by in the morning. She left a note and some money. It was 10,000 won, and Vinny wondered what to do with it. As soon as he bought cigarettes or something to eat, it would be gone. His friend also told him that the teacher had said if Vinny skipped more classes, he would be expelled. Vinny was upset that he had to attend class the next day or face expulsion, but he felt like giving up. When Vinny arrived at school, he was poorly received by the staff member in charge of student entry. This man was not known for being kind to students. His teaching method was so harsh that it made students even less inclined to attend school. He called the students rebels and said it was because of people like Vinny that the school was in such a state. He made it clear that if Vinny made another mistake, he would be expelled. Then, muttering about Vinny's ridiculous hair color and treating him as an aberration, the staff member added that he didn't even know how Vinny ended up at the school. He believed Vinny wouldn't graduate and thought the school was just wasting time on someone like him. He even mentioned that he would prefer to expel Vinny right then, but Vinny's best friend arrived and stood in front of the man. With the presence of a respectable student, the conversation immediately changed tone. The friend simply stared at the man, who was beside himself with anger, and walked past him as if nothing had happened. Approaching Vinny, he asked if his friend was okay. Vinny didn't look pleased. Everyone knew not to meet Vinny's gaze or speak ill of him behind his back, as the consequences could be severe. He had acted this way since he was young to protect himself. Reaching the door, Vinny said he wanted to speak with the idiot at the window who was staring at him. Vinny told the guy to come to him willingly while he was still being nice. The boy at the window apologized, saying he had only looked by accident and didn't mean any harm. However, Vinny grabbed a chair and seemed ready to discipline the boy. Vinny didn't care if the guy was sorry or not. He needed to discipline him so others wouldn't dare do the same. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the boys were still gawking at the beautiful blonde exchange student. She was on the phone, asking her father to send her bike by mail because she wanted to ride it. While she was happily talking to her father on the phone, Dom Kang was having a hard time with his own call. He was trying to reach the guy who had sold him the bike, but now he wasn't answering. No matter how many times he called, he couldn't get a response. He thought the guy was ignoring his calls and messages. Yuna, watching him, noticed he was glued to his phone and now had a very serious expression. Meanwhile, Mia wasn't paying much attention to Yuna because she was sketching a hummingbird. Yuna asked what Mia had been drawing all that time. Mia explained she was working hard on a design. Yuna then wanted to know if it was some kind of logo, and Mia replied that yes, it was, and it would be of a hummingbird. Yuna mentioned that her brother and Jay had quickly finished their snack and gone outside. She asked Mia if she knew where they had gone. Mia said she wasn't sure, but overheard them talking about submitting an application for a competition. Mia hadn't known her brother was trying to join a competition, but she thought that now that they were living together, he would improve his skills. Mia was beaming, feeling like she had completed the perfect sketch. All that was left was to show it to the boys and see what they thought. Meanwhile, the boys left the post office after sending in the application form. Jay asked if it had really been necessary for him to come along just to send the form. Minu said that since they were on the same team, they had to stick together. He asked if Jay would rather relax at school while he did all the hard work alone. Jay then told Minu to drop it and hurry up because they were wasting time. Minu, feeling hungry, said that before they left, he wanted to grab something to eat. Jay told him he wasn't in the mood and would eat something on his own later. Minu noticed there was no middle ground with Jay. He was always so rude. Across the street, Minu saw someone with a completely floral pink bike and thought it looked unusual. The man called his bike Sina-chan and asked her to wait a bit while he submitted his competition application. He then put a lock on it, ensuring no one would take his beloved bike. After showering the bike with kisses, he said he'd be back quickly. Just looking at him gave Minu chills. He thought the guy was way too eccentric. Minu and Jay left the man there because they needed to get back quickly. They were only on a class break. However, the man didn't appreciate hearing Minu call his bike stupid. Minu asked if the man was talking to him. The man said yes, and demanded to know why Minu had insulted his bike with such a mean name. The man called Minu a worthless human and said he couldn't use just any name for his superbike. The two boys found the man's behavior very strange. They figured he must be some kind of otaku or something. Furious, the man yelled at Minu to take back what he said about his bike. He was so angry that he grabbed Minu by the collar, spitting as he shouted. He rambled on, using strange names only otakus would understand. Minu looked to his friend for help, but Jay told him to just apologize and leave. Seeing that his friend wasn't going to help, Minu said he took it back, and only said it because the bike was very pretty. The cyclist told him not to look at her like that again because he was just a little useless. The man then bent down and grabbed his competition application form, pointing out that his team's name was Manga Team. Minu realized that the otaku was also going to to participate in the street league. The man added that they could call her Sana-chan because that was her name. Like her owner, the bike was also very exotic and had a unique name. The two boys couldn't understand how someone so strange could exist. They pedaled quickly back to school since they were only on their break. On the way, they kept thinking about how bizarre that otaku was. Jay commented that the bike was probably his girlfriend, which was why Minu made him so angry. Minu, looking at Jay, couldn't tell if he was serious or joking, as Jay never showed any reaction. The man passed them and called the two of them slow schoolboys. The passing cyclist said he hoped they would enjoy the view of the back of his bike, calling it very charming. Minu didn't know who this person was or why he was so full of himself, especially while riding an ordinary bike. To solve his problems, Dom Kang called his father's henchmen and explained that he had been scammed. This couldn't stand. They were a respected gang and couldn't face such embarrassment, especially since Dom Kang himself had suggested buying online. One of the henchmen told Dom Kang to finish his class peacefully, assuring him they would handle everything. The henchman then summoned another associate, explaining that someone had stolen money from their young master. Using the provided phone number and bank account, they would track down the scammer. He instructed the associate to pass the information to a hacker to locate the swindler. The other associate confirmed that finding the scammer's location would be easy for their hackers, who had recently breached one of Korea's biggest credit card companies. He ordered that once they had a location, they should bring a few more men and some tools. Their goal was to scare the scammer. Dom Kang was deeply upset, feeling he should never have fallen for an internet scam. He just hoped he could find the guy and confront him face to face. As Dom Kang thought about this, his face darkened. When someone placed a hand on his shoulder, he turned with such an angry expression that he scared a classmate who had only come to tell him Yuna wanted to speak with him. Though still upset and wondering what Yuna wanted, seeing her always put Dom Kang in a good mood. Even if Dom Kang wanted to stay serious, he couldn't when he saw Yuna's eyes. So, he ran to find out what she wanted. Approaching Yuna, Dom Kang asked how he could help. She wanted to know why he seemed so gloomy that day. Yuna gave him a piece of gum to calm him down, telling him to stop stressing and have some sugar to lift his spirits. To Dom Kang, that gum was more than incredible. It felt like a gift from the goddess Yuna. Dom Kang told Yuna he felt terrible because she wouldn't give him a little kiss. Annoyed by his comment, Yuna gently caressed Dom Kang's face before punching him. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the scammer was happily riding a bicycle, wearing a helmet, and snacking on treats he had bought. He had bought them with money scammed from a fool who fell for the classic new and cheap bike trick. Now the scammer was enjoying a feast bought with the 50,000 won sent by the gullible buyer. Heading back to his hideout, the scammer felt ecstatic about his purchases. He planned to sneak in quietly to avoid the landlord asking for rent. The scammer thought he could slip by unnoticed and avoid paying, but something felt off when he got home. The door had been forced open, and his apartment invaded. Thinking he might have been robbed, the scammer rushed inside. However, once inside, he found several men in black suits holding various tools, and none of them looked friendly. After all, the scammer was just a student and cyclist. He didn't understand why they were welcoming him with such intensity. Trembling, the scammer dropped his bag of food on the floor and asked who they were and what they wanted. It was nighttime. After the scammer had arrived home to find several people there, they all demanded explanations for why he had tricked their young master. Now, the scammer was immobilized in a chair, unable to speak, still wearing his cycling helmet. One of Dom Kang's father's henchmen was furious with the scammer, pointing out that he had swindled the wrong person. The henchman told the scammer that if he wanted to con someone, he should be ready to face all consequences. Dom Kang's father's bodyguard expressed his dissatisfaction at having to go to such a place and waste his time. The bodyguard warned the scammer that, even tied to the chair, he would witness the arrival of their young master, and things wouldn't be cheap. After all, the scammer had effectively bought himself a one-way ticket with that 50,000 won scam. While everyone surrounded the seated scammer, their young master, Dom Kang, arrived, greeted with respect by all. When Dom Kang walked in, his face was furious. He had spent the entire day trying to track down the guy who had scammed him. The scammer, sitting in the chair, looked at the young man in front of him, thinking Dom Kang was just a schoolboy. He couldn't understand why everyone obeyed Dom Kang without question. The scammer started trembling even more when Dom Kang, with his hands in his pockets, began to fidget as if reaching for something. However, Dom Kang was only retrieving his prized treasure, something he had nurtured on a particularly upsetting day. The scammer cyclist was sitting in the chair, already in tears, waiting for the worst to come out of that pocket. The scammer was puzzled by the change in Dom Kang's demeanor when he pulled out nothing more than a caramel candy, which made the previously serious young master look amazed. The scammer was so caught off guard by this that he even stopped crying. One of the men asked what they should do with the scammer, but Dom Kang just kept chewing because the candy, given to him by Yuna, tasted amazing. Regaining his serious expression, Dom Kang looked at the scammer sitting there and asked where the bike he had sold him was. One of the several henchmen in the room pointed to the bike, and Dom Kang saw it was almost brand new. Approaching the bike, Dom Kang spoke to it, saying he didn't know what was happening but was very pleased pleased because it was in excellent condition and had only cost him 50,000 won. At that moment, the scammer, the real owner of the bike, if he weren't immobilized and unable to speak, would have surely said something. The scammer's agony at seeing someone else approach his bike was evident. Dom Kang's father's bodyguard thought something good must have happened that day because Dom Kang was in such a good mood. Dom Kang, satisfied with getting the bike at such a low price, commented to the scammer that since the scammer said he wouldn't ride anymore, he didn't need the helmet. Delighted with the bike and helmet, Dom Kang said he'd taken the bike so the scammer could leave now. The bodyguard felt a slight disappointment with his young boss. Meanwhile, the scammer cyclist was crying, no longer from fear, but from the profound sadness of losing his bike. The leader of the henchmen told the scammer he was very lucky, then ordered his men to release him. Sometime later, the man was found in a soft patch of dirt where he had been planted upright. He wasn't alone. A few cats surrounded him, eager to play. Elsewhere, at Jay's house, Minu wanted to use the computer for a bit, but Jay refused as he wanted to attend an online class. Just then, Minu heard some noises coming from the window. Minu asked if Jay had also heard the noise outside. Congested from a cold, Jay replied that it was probably just a cat or something similar. Not satisfied with the answer, Minu opened the window to check outside. He found Dom Kang, extremely happy with his new bike, showing it off like a trophy. Minu was also thrilled for his friend's new acquisition. When it came to bikes, of course, Jay was interested and he quickly went to the window to see what was going on. Within minutes, the three of them were outside Jay's house, admiring the bike. Minu seized the opportunity to test it out. However, as Minu rode the bike, he felt he had seen it somewhere on the street before, but couldn't recall where. Looking at Dom Kang, Minu asked if the bike had been expensive and how much he had paid for it. Pleased with himself, Dom Kang proudly stated he had bargained it down to just 50,000 won on a used goods site. Seeing Minu and Jay's reactions, as they seemed unable to believe his words, Dom Kang asked if he had paid too much. Minu and Jay looked at the bike again, realizing it was in excellent condition. They then asked Dom Kang what he had done to the bike's owner to get such a low price. Dom Kang simply repeated the excuse the scammer had given him, that he wasn't going to use it anymore, so he sold it cheap. Jay intended to leave Minu and Dom Kang outside and go back inside to study more, as his grades had dropped significantly. Now with a bike, Dom Kang, who didn't know how to ride it, asked his friends for advice. Minu suggested Dom Kang practice skidding, as it would make it easier to ride a single-gear bike. But judging by Dom Kang's expression, Minu figured his friend had never heard of skidding before. Feeling excited, Minu tried to explain that skidding was a trick for single-gear bikes where you stop the rear wheel using leg strength. Seeing that even his explanation didn't help, Minu decided to demonstrate, telling Dom Kang he just needed to watch and repeat. Quickly, Minu performed the trick so Dom Kang could understand. Feeling confident, Dom Kang thought he had understood just by watching and decided to give it a try. At first, Dom Kang couldn't position his feet properly. One friend commented that this wasn't suited for him. Still, Dom Kang kept trying, determined to figure out a way to get it right. After spending a few minutes trying to fit his foot in place to at least attempt pedaling, Dom Kang set off awkwardly. A few pedal strokes in, Dom Kang was already exhausted. Then Dom Kang had the brilliant idea of going downhill on a bike without brakes. Minu asked Dom Kang to try skidding like he had demonstrated earlier. Dom Kang noticed he was almost losing control of the bike. There was no way he could let that happen, so he tried pedaling in the opposite direction. He yelled that it wasn't working at all. To Dom Kang, the pedals were spinning too fast for him to stop. Dom Kang went downhill screaming that he couldn't stop. His legs were now pedaling on their own. After the accident, Minu realized his friend wasn't very athletically skilled. Minu thought it would be better if they all went to a shop the next day to fix their friend's bike brakes. Another school day dawned at Sunny High, where students prepared for yet another intense study session. The girls grouped together, complaining about their appearances and trying to apply makeup to conceal imperfections. Meanwhile, some students embraced a more adventurous lifestyle, spending their time skateboarding around campus. In one group of girls, they talked about how they wished Minu would someday notice their feelings. As a skateboarder sped past the girls, the wind caused their skirts to lift slightly. The boy, moving at high speed, felt smug, having caught a glimpse of two pieces of underwear, one pink and one white. However, the group of three girls was far from pleased with his antics. They grew even angrier upon realizing the wind lifting their skirts wasn't an accident. The orange-haired boy was intentionally trying to peek at the girls' underwear. This brought him great satisfaction. He observed that most of the girls wore white underwear, which he thought seemed to be a trend. Then he spotted the girl he was most interested in, Chelly, the blonde exchange student. She was in the group, interacting and being as friendly as only she could be. This sparked an immense interest in the orange-haired boy for the blonde girl. Performing radical skateboarding tricks, he seemed unusually fired up. The orange-haired skateboarder adjusted his hair as it was his most prized feature, always drawing attention. Feeling confident as ever, he decided it was time to approach his target, the girl who brought him so much joy. Unfortunately, he couldn't. He was cornered by some girls who weren't too happy about his skateboarding stunts. They were even more annoyed after realizing the wind lifting their skirts was no accident. One of the girls decided to caress his stomach with light punches. The others cheerfully decided to stomp on the boy so he could feel loved. Meanwhile, others in the group surrounded surrounding Michelle were admiring the logo Mia had designed. Mia had been tasked with creating the logo to impress Jay. Lifting her notebook, Mia showed it to everyone and asked what they thought. Minu, ever the gentleman, took Mia's hands and declared the logo beautiful. He declared that now the team could win thanks to it. Yuna, knowing her brother well, told Minu to stop using that as an excuse to hold Mia's hands. Minu was upset because the way Yuna put it made him seem strange. Chelly, stepping closer to get a better look at Mia's logo, said Mia drew very well and asked to see it up close. Mia, still holding a grudge against Chelly for kissing Jay, refused to let Chelly take a closer look at the logo. Noticing Mia's indifference and lack of cooperation, Chelly asked what Mia's problem was with her. The atmosphere grew so tense that even the usually oblivious Minu, who rarely noticed anything, realized the girls were at odds. However, Minu was delighted because they now had the perfect logo for the team. That heated exchange shifted the mood slightly. Minu asked Jay if he liked the logo too, since Jay hadn't shown any reaction. In a calm, cold tone, without even looking at the drawing, Jay simply said yes. Mia felt satisfied and expressed her happiness to Jay, saying she was glad he liked it since she had made the logo specifically for him. From a distance, Yuna saw Dom Kang stumbling and disoriented. She couldn't figure out what he had gotten himself into this time. Dom Kang struggled to walk, holding onto the classroom furniture to reach his team. Everyone noticed how difficult it was for Dom Kang to move and wanted to know if he had been in a fight or if someone had hurt him. Trying to appear cheerful but visibly drained, Dom Kang explained that he had been practicing skidding late into the night the day before. Now Dom Kang was determined to buy brakes after class because he was scared of riding the bike, which seemed dangerous without them. Minu, concerned about the bike's safety, asked Dom Kang where he had left it and if he remembered to lock it. The sore but smiling Dom Kang reassured Minu not to worry, saying the bike would never be stolen. Outside the school in the corridor, Dom Kang's bike was tied to a Rottweiler, which was attracting a lot of attention from passers-by. Everyone who passed by admired the bike, noting how its dynamics and color matched beautifully. However, whenever someone tried to approach, they were met with the massive Rottweiler ready to defend it. Just looking at the dog, people grew fearful, wondering who had the idea to tie a Rottweiler to a bike. In the classroom, Dom Kang was the cause of the commotion and the mastermind behind tying the Rottweiler to guard his bike. Dom Kang's behavior unsettled Jay, who, despite knowing him well, couldn't understand him. Even on days when Dom Kang showed no visible reaction, Jay couldn't hide his emotions in such bizarre situations. Mia, on the other hand, didn't care about Dom Kang's bike or the dog tied to it. Mia asked Jay if he had time over the weekend to teach her how to ride a bike. Her friend Yuna, wanting to ensure Jay couldn't back out, told him that Mia had worked hard researching to create the team logo. Thus, as a thank you, Jay should teach her how to ride a bike that weekend. Indifferently, Jay simply said he would keep his word. Mia was delighted to hear that Jay would teach her to ride a bike that weekend. However, the blonde exchange student, Chelly, told Mia that she could stop right there because Chelly couldn't borrow Jay. Mia wanted to know what Chelly meant, saying Chelly couldn't speak for Jay. Chelly didn't care. She already had plans for the weekend and wanted to go out too. Dom Kang, very excited, announced that he would also join because he wanted to practice. Minu, not wanting to leave Jay alone with the girls, said he would train with them all that weekend. Yuna just watched, thinking the boys were brainless. They didn't even realize Mia was arranging this as an excuse to spend time alone with Jay. Minu looked at June and considered inviting him, but Minu noticed June was probably busy studying for college entrance exams. However, June was actually glued to his phone, analyzing potential rivals. In the world of competitive sports, staying ahead wasn't just about skills, but also knowing your opponents. June noticed one athlete who stood out, riding a 5-speed bike. Currently, this athlete was training in the same city, preparing for the championship in which their team was also competing. The athlete was achieving speeds between 89 km/h and 92 km/h. However, his training occasionally pushed him to reach 97 km/h. Since his training involved downhill courses, he was always followed by a car that filmed him constantly. These training sessions were streamed live so everyone could witness the athlete's prowess. In his most recent session, the athlete reached the incredible speed of 102 km/h. This result left June very apprehensive, as he had never heard of any athlete achieving such speed. At the bike shop, Dom Kang, not wanting to face further challenges with his bike, brought it in to have brakes installed. Harry finished the maintenance work and added front brakes to give him more safety. Dom Kang was thrilled because he could now ride his bike confidently. Jay was the one who told Dom Kang about the shop, but hadn't realized the girl from the webcast was the manager. Minu asked the beautiful mechanic if she was the same person who did the webcast and also ran the shop. She explained that the live streams were just for fun, and her real job was working at the shop, which her father owned. Harry then asked them about the upcoming competition and why they weren't training or exercising. Minu, confident in his friend's perfect execution, declared that with Jay on their team, victory was guaranteed. But June interrupted, having been observing the competition participants and checking their rankings. He said that if they didn't take it seriously, they wouldn't even make it past the preliminaries in the race. June's presence caused some unease. Minu wanted to know if June's presence there was frequent. June promptly briefly responded that it was, and that, on that specific day, he had come for routine maintenance and to replace a tire. Dom Kang was excited to see several of his friends in the same place. He thought it was basically their little clubhouse. Minu expressed concern about June spending time investigating other competitors, especially with entrance exams approaching. Still, June wanted to show them the results of his research on other participants and their abilities. When June played a video of a cyclist easily reaching speeds over 100 km/h, they were all stunned. In fact, they found it unbelievable that such speeds could be achieved by a cyclist. Harry, the bike shop manager and an expert in the field, explained that achieving such speed on a 5.1 gear was mostly due to the assistance of a car acting as a windbreaker. Under those conditions, any elite cyclist could reach 100 km/h. She also mentioned that the new Guinness World Record for cycling speed was over 200 km/h. Minu remarked that there seemed to be no limit to human potential. He then asked June who that person was. After researching, June reported that he was known as Monster 13. It appeared he had been a well-known American football player in high school. As quarterback wearing number 13, he led his team and was called the Beast of Football for his ability to practically carry the team on his own. One day, however, he got injured during a game and could no longer run as he used to due to persistent knee pain. He quit football, and after giving up his dream of playing in the US, returned to Korea. He spent his days cycling as a way to rehabilitate his knee. For him, repetitive cycling functioned as intensive physical therapy. His love for bikes and cycling transformed him into a true beast on wheels. Now he had formed the Monster Team, which would participate in the competition. He was considered one of the favorites to win. June explained that street cyclists and competitive cyclists used completely different muscles and had different body compositions. He noted that while these athletes' bodies were built for track cycling, allowing them to handle a 5.1 gear with ease, it was absurd to think they could beat Monster 13 by just chatting among friends. Minu, dissatisfied, said there was no way they could do anything in a competition if someone like that was participating. Dom Kang couldn't offer much input since he had just bought his bike. Seeing their disappointment at being physically outmatched, Harry offered them the chance to use training rollers. She invited them to follow her so she could show them the space and explain how the rollers worked. When Harry brought them to the room designated for roller and bike training, they were impressed, having never seen anything so detailed. She explained that this was where team members occasionally came to train. The rollers were great for practicing pedaling techniques and testing conditions. She mentioned that training there would help them easily identify the best posture and style for each rider. Dom Kang, despite his inexperience, found it fascinating and wanted to be the first to try the new experience. However, the moment he positioned his bike on the roller for training, he struggled immediately. That alone was enough to frustrate him. When Dom Kang finally managed to start pedaling, it was clear how much effort he was putting into even simple strokes. He wobbled from side to side, and the irritating noise he made suggested he couldn't control it properly. He never imagined that using a bike on a roller could be so complicated, not to mention the sheer strength it required. At one point, Dom Kang asked why it was so hard, as his bike was shaking wildly from side to side. The shop manager kindly explained that it was shaking because he was applying too much force to the handlebars and shoulders. She advised him to keep them relaxed, and it would become much easier to control. Despite her tips, he still found it challenging. While it sounded simple when she explained it, it wasn't so easy in practice. As Dom Kang continued complaining, he noticed that next to him, Jay had placed his bike on a roller and was pedaling as if he'd been doing it all his life. Dom Kang asked Jay why he was so good at it. Jay explained that the secret was his extensive practice as a child, alongside his uncle. Minu also chimed in, remarking that Jay was good at everything he did. He found it terribly unfair. June smiled, adding that Jay was truly amazing, which was why he was the team's ace. The mechanic observed that Jay's upper body remained perfectly steady, and his pedaling was completely smooth. He was in top form. Anyone could step on the pedals, but using all the muscles to pedal naturally, as Jay demonstrated, required a lot of practice. Harry, watching Jay, noticed he truly was the nephew of the great Ma Hanjo, possessing a natural talent for cycling. The beautiful mechanic then informed them she needed to assist another customer, but encouraged everyone to practice on the trainers whenever they could. Once they felt confident pedaling, they should practice on the streets. After numerous attempts, Dom Kang felt completely exhausted and frustrated. It was much harder than he had expected. Minu was also tired and drenched in sweat. While he didn't struggle as much as Dom Kang, he too tired out quickly. Watching Jay's ease, Minu had initially thought it was simply a matter of sitting on the bike and pedaling, but he now realized there was much more to it. He didn't even know how to perform a skid yet and still had a lot to learn. Despite being utterly drained, Dom Kang was already thinking about riding his bike the next day, determined to impress Yuna. Minu asked what Dom Kang saw in his sister, as Minu himself didn't appreciate her beauty and thought she resembled an ugly cow. Dom Kang didn't take kindly to such insolence, insisting that his beloved looked nothing like a bovine. Minu couldn't understand why only oddballs seemed to like his sister. This truly baffled him. This revelation shook Dom Kang's heart. He had never imagined his beloved could be Minu's sister. Minu Minu found his reaction strange because the two were identical twins, and until now Dom Kang hadn't noticed. However, Dom Kang became extremely excited and refused to believe it. There had to be another explanation. How could they be siblings when they didn't look alike? Maybe they shared a slight resemblance, but only a little. Minu asked if Dom Kang really hadn't suspected any connection between him and Yuna until now. Suddenly, Dom Kang started acting strangely. He jumped in front of Minu, startling him, and Minu asked what he wanted. Out of nowhere, Dom Kang stood before Minu, calling him brother. Minu felt both embarrassed and annoyed by his friend's odd behavior. The situation was so bizarre that even the other two, who were pedaling, stopped to watch. Jay, who never left his studies, even stopped pedaling and studying to see what was happening. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Mia, fresh from a shower, was drying her hair and feeling content. Looking at her bike, she remembered Jay had promised to teach her how to ride. She saw it as a great opportunity for them to bond and hoped she'd manage to ride properly the next day, eager to make him proud. The day Mia had been eagerly awaiting finally arrived. She was at the park where Jay was finally going to teach her how to ride a bike. On a bench sat Mia and Shelly, both appearing to wait for something. Dom Kang approached them, carrying a bag with some yogurts, intending to cheer them up. He offered them their choice of flavors. One chose strawberry, and the other wanted a traditional flavor. Shelly, rebellious as ever, merely glanced at the lid and tossed it away without licking it. This annoyed Dom Kang, who would have loved to lick the lid himself. He commented that she shouldn't have thrown it away without licking it first, asking if she didn't know the proper etiquette for eating yogurt. Shelly, in turn, ignored him, steadfastly refusing to lick the lid. Dom Kang, however, licked his yogurt lid with great enthusiasm. He explained that before tossing the lid, it should be licked like that. Shelly found it disgusting. Dom Kang licked the lid so thoroughly it gleamed, which grossed her out even more. Upset by her reaction, he retorted that this was how everyone ate yogurt. Mia tried to console him, saying she ate it the same way. Yuna arrived with the boys and noticed there were already people with Mia. Her brother walked past her as usual, messing up her hair, knowing it irritated her. Jay, ever the gentleman, didn't even notice. Yuna, for her part, paid no attention to Jay either. Minu, playful as always, arrived cracking jokes with the girls waiting for Dom Kang. Mia stood up to wave, hoping Jay would notice. Shelly wanted to be noticed too, but didn't get up. Dom Kang, both gentlemanly and very playful, stood up, bowed, and greeted the newcomers. He was eager to show Yuna his new cycling skills. He shared that he had spent the entire night practicing just to show her how much he had learned. However, the young woman asked him to stop trying to look cool. Though he claimed he had practiced, her expectations were zero. Dom Kang needed to impress his beloved lady somehow, so he decided to perform a stunt to earn points with her. Initially, everything was going well. He was going all out, appearing like a master of cycling skills. He demonstrated his unique skid technique, having already mastered a new way to hurt himself. Lacking luck and skill, he failed to execute the long skid. His lack of ability caused a minor accident, which he could feel in his lower parts. After feeling intense pain, Dom Kang couldn't bear it anymore. He quickly dismounted and rolled on the ground like a child. Watching him squirm, Yuna remarked that his training really paid off, as he could now put on bicycle comedy shows. Walking up to him, she said he shouldn't try so hard to make her laugh. Just being himself was enough. Unbothered by the chaos, Mia kept her attention solely on Jay. She approached him, asking if her bike seat was too high. Looking serious, Jay explained that if the seat were too low, pedaling would be difficult and bad for her joints. Mia nodded, promising to get used to his suggested setup. Trying to be sweet, Mia reminded Jay to hold the seat behind her so she wouldn't fall. Preferring not to touch her, he assured her he was holding the bike seat firmly, and they could make their first attempt. Minu stood nearby, enjoying the spectacle, and suggested to Shelly that they do something else. The blonde refused. Though clearly annoyed, Shelly preferred to stay right there. Mia's insecurity was constant. She kept begging Jay not to let go. He told her to stop being scared and try pedaling, pointing out that he was doing all the pushing while she made zero effort. He warned her that tensing her shoulders would ruin her balance, advising her to keep her upper body relaxed. Mia truly had no idea how to ride. She wobbled continuously, pedaling in a bizarre manner, and whenever she lost her balance, she threw herself onto Jay. He repeatedly instructed her to center her weight and stop tensing up, complaining that her stiffness made it harder to help. Feigning embarrassment but wanting his attention, she agreed to try again. With each passing second, Shelly grew increasingly irritated. Jay wasn't paying her any attention. Finally snapping, she muttered she couldn't take it anymore. Minu watched as Shelly marched up to Mia and demanded she stop flirting with Jay. Though Minu was looking straight ahead, his mind was reminiscing about his childhood. He thought about the days he spent riding bikes with his sisters, especially when he taught his youngest sister how to ride. He remembered Yuna teasing him, saying their father bought the bike specifically so he could babysit them. Despite the teasing, he loved cycling with them. He recalled a day when a highly skilled boy rode past them, completely ignoring their presence. His little sister had been amazed by the cyclist's agility. That brief encounter inspired Minu to train hard to match the stranger's skill. Back then, his youngest sister excitedly suggested they chase the boy down. Minu told his sisters to hold on tight as he pedaled with all his might. Those precious memories of them together left Minu feeling calm and serene. Back in the present, Shelly approached Jay and asked if he could teach her to ride, claiming she had forgotten. Sweating and trying to avoid the drama, Jay bluntly pointed out that he had heard her bragging about her excellent cycling skills before. Upset, Mia snapped at Shelly, telling her to stop flirting with Jay so he could get back to the lesson. Unwilling to back down, Shelly asked if Mia was actually there to learn how to ride, or just to spend the entire day groping him. Offended, Mia demanded to know when she had ever groped Jay. She insisted she barely touched him, denied making any inappropriate contact, and ordered Shelly to stop making false claims. Seeing his friend's embarrassment, Minu intervened to defuse the situation. He suggested they switch partners. Minu would teach Mia, while Jay took a break with Shelly. Jay sighed in relief as his friend rescued him, having completely lost track of the girls bickering. Taking full advantage of having Jay to herself, Shelly placed her sunglasses on his face to see how they looked. She then grabbed his glasses, trying them on and asking for his opinion. She couldn't keep them on for long, as the strong prescription lenses made her dizzy. Unamused by her game, Jay handed her sunglasses back and demanded his own pair. Shelly stubbornly refused, declaring she wouldn't give them back. Watching them from afar, Mia felt a deep wave of disappointment. It looked like Jay was having much more fun with Shelly than he ever did with her. Noticing her sudden shift in mood, Minu asked if she was unhappy with her new instructor. The saddened girl shyly replied that it wasn't about him. However, Minu's sister, Yuna, was standing right behind them and disliked where the conversation was heading. Irritated, Yuna demanded to know why her brother was teaching Mia instead of Jay. Minu explained that Jay was tired, so they had swapped places. Grinding her teeth, Yuna sternly warned her brother not to try anything funny with her friend. Before Minu could respond, Dom Kang suddenly appeared. Saluting Minu as the boss, Dom Kang eagerly declared he would take care of Yuna, so Minu could go have fun. Minu asked Dom to stop calling him that, finding it weird. Dom ignored him, his only priority being Minu's sister. He then told Minu to go have fun with Mia. Upset, Yuna told Dom it was strange and disruptive, insisting he shouldn't call her brother boss. Showing affection, Dom explained that he called Minu boss because he already felt like part of the family. Yuna, again showing her affection, lightly grabbed Dom's neck, preparing to pat his face with a gentle punch. Meanwhile, Mia had to settle for her new cycling instructor. At a certain point, Mia realized she wasn't talented at cycling, which made her cry. Minu tried to explain gently that cycling wasn't about talent, but effort. He explained that her fear of falling was preventing her from moving forward. With her head down and silent, Mia seemed to agree with her new cycling teacher. Minu continued, reiterating it wasn't about talent. The problem was her timidity. If she remained that scared, she would never move forward, potentially preventing her from becoming a cyclist. Mia lowered her eyes, remembering how her classmates used to bully her in school. She was constantly teased by classmates who made inappropriate jokes. Mia always remained silent, never expressing her anger to avoid making her friends uncomfortable. The memories of that time only made Mia sadder. Minu encouraged her to keep trying, warning that if she gave up so easily, fear could take over later. Placing his hand on her helmet, Minu told her not to be afraid of falling. Whatever she did, she should always have confidence. Everything was scary the first time, but after achieving it, it wouldn't be a big deal anymore. His words gave Mia some comfort, and she wished to be brave enough to keep trying. She was determined not to let the fear of falling stop her from becoming a cyclist and riding alongside Jay. Minu was happy that Mia was determined and willing to try again. He wouldn't stop teaching her. Holding the bike while Mia tried to balance, Minu was always there to support her. With words of encouragement, Minu kept telling Mia she was almost there. If she put in just a little more effort, she would see good results. Minu asked Mia not to look down, but to keep looking ahead and pedal with confidence. Mia, now free from distractions and focused on her goal, was making progress. Despite her lingering fear, she felt reassured knowing Minu was there to support her. Satisfied, Minu believed she had already gotten the hang of it. However, he told her not to stop and to keep pedaling. Mia agreed to continue, but asked Minu to hold her a little longer. However, when Mia said those words and looked back, receiving no response, she noticed Minu was already some distance away. Minu encouraged her to keep going, and her hard work was being rewarded with everyone admiring her. Yuna was happy because her friend was succeeding. Dom Kang noticed Mia was doing everything on her own. Shelly, with a hint of envy, didn't understand what was so great about knowing how to ride a bike. Everyone knew how to do it. The look of disdain and disapproval that Jay gave Shelly was devastating. Although he didn't say anything, he didn't need to. On the other hand, Minu was proud of the good job he had done. Mia was succeeding because he was an excellent teacher. Mia seemed to have really gotten the hang of it. She could already ride without needing someone to hold her. This made Mia very satisfied. It was progress she had achieved on her own. When Mia arrived back to the group with her bike, Minu told her she now knew how to ride. He added that it hadn't been so hard for her to get the hang of it. Now that Mia knew how to ride, they could all go for a ride together. Mia was very pleased with Minu's recognition for doing a good job and being patient in teaching her. Jay once again looked at Minu and Mia having fun and reprimanded them with just a glance. With an even more disapproving look, Jay told them they seemed quite comfortable and that he was leaving. Minu didn't understand Jay's attitude. That reaction was quite sudden. Jay's behavior caused the whole group to disperse, with everyone going their separate ways. However, Minu's intention had been for them all to stay together and enjoy a bike ride. Mia was also saddened because now that she had learned to ride and could join them, Jay was the first to want to leave. Yuna said it was a shame, but since everyone was leaving, she thought they should go too. Mia, satisfied with her progress, said it had been fun, but she also needed to go. Yuna looked to the side and noticed that Dom Kang hadn't said anything. She asked if he wasn't leaving, and he replied that he would walk her home. Yuna thanked him, saying she would take a taxi. Dom then insisted he would accompany her until she got one. Yuna walked ahead and Dom followed behind, keeping watch. At a certain point along the way, Dom was very tired. He asked Yuna to keep an eye on the bike because he was going into a convenience store to get something to drink. Dom said he'd grab something and asked if Yuna wanted anything. She just wanted him to stop following her, finding it very annoying. Some boys were passing by, upset about having missed something. One of them just wanted to head home peacefully. One of them said he'd be back soon, as he was just going to the convenience store, leaving the other three behind. They were annoyed because their school was the only one in the area that made them study even on weekends. While waiting for their friend to return, one of them noticed Yuna standing alone across the street holding a bike. He commented to his friends that the girl wasn't bad looking. A friend asked if he was going to try asking her out. Smiling, he said to just wait, as he was going to cross the street and talk to her. Yuna, upset, fiddled with her phone, wondering why Dom was taking so long when he was only at the convenience store. Suddenly, someone approached her, calling for her attention. Looking up, she saw the guy telling her she was pretty and wanted her to give him her number. Yuna simply pretended the guy didn't exist, completely ignoring him. The guy, seemingly oblivious, kept insisting she give him her number and add him online. Growing more annoyed, Yuna looked at him and told him she wasn't interested and to stop bothering her. He, however, didn't like being rejected by her at all. The friends across the street noticed when Yuna asked him to stop bothering her. Amused, they decided to take photos of the moment. The guy, now angry, yelled at Yuna to repeat what she had just said. He insisted there was nothing wrong with asking for a girl's number. He told her to stop pretending to be so perfect, as she was just a vulgar girl. Enraged, he continued hurling inappropriate insults and called her several offensive names. However, the scene didn't end there. The guy was quickly put in his place when someone arrived to teach him a lesson. The lesson was so well delivered that the friends across the street stood frozen as if hypnotized. The guy, who had bullied and offended Yuna simply because she wouldn't give him her phone number, had now learned his lesson. Dom Kong was the one who delivered the disciplinary lesson, making the guy understand that he shouldn't treat people that way. Taking off his cap, Dom revealed a furious expression, making it clear he wouldn't tolerate anyone approaching Yuna disrespectfully. The bully from earlier was now knocked out on the ground after learning the hard lesson. The friends on the other side, not fully understanding what had happened, were already upset, blaming Yuna for everything. Yuna also noticed their stares and started trembling, as she knew the situation wasn't going to end well, especially since Dom Kang didn't seem to be in a good mood and wouldn't hesitate to discipline the other two as well. One of the guys on the other side stared at Dom, thinking Dom should be scared since there were two of them. Dom Kang moved so quickly that they didn't even realize he was already educating him. The guy had to be taught a lesson. He needed to respect women, and for that, Dom Kang was there, ensuring such behavior wouldn't go unpunished as he taught the guy a lesson. Little by little, the guy seemed to understand that he shouldn't bother girls who didn't want to talk. Dom was a specialist in disciplining people who didn't respect his dear Yuna. Yuna, on the other hand, was yelling at Dom to stop, not wanting him to get into trouble. Still, Dom continued teaching the guy a bit more because his manners were completely unacceptable. Then Dom looked at the next one, as there were three of them, and he had only disciplined two. The third one, trembling and sweating, knew the lesson might soon be his turn. That's when Yuna pleaded again for Dom to stop. She was terrified they might get into more trouble. Yuna and Dom Kang walked back in silence. She was still angry because he had fought, and he was upset because he couldn't stop himself. At one point, Yuna said she would take a taxi home from there. Dom asked if she was upset just because he had resolved the situation earlier. Yuna said yes, reminding him that she had already asked him not to go around disciplining people. Dom asked if she expected him to just stand by and watch the guy being disrespectful. Yuna replied that he didn't need to act so abruptly when teaching people lessons. Frustrated, Dom asked if she really thought he should have done nothing, if she preferred he just stood there and watched. Yuna fell silent for a moment. She knew she was wrong, but didn't want Dom to intervene in her matters. It was then that Dom Kang told Yuna that, for a girl who grew up like a princess, she probably thought he was like everyone else. Walking away from Yuna, Dom said he genuinely hoped she got home safely. The guy from the convenience store, who had run away and left the shopping bag behind, was was on the phone. He seemed to be calling reinforcements, explaining what had happened to his 3 friends. Trouble had been set in motion as he recounted the incident to a close friend. However, these were friends of Vinny, who was known for being a troublemaker and instigator of conflicts. The guy on the phone said he understood, assuring them they would take action. Vinny's best friend was informing Vinny about the situation. Some guys were bothering his friends. Vinny didn't like the news at all, put out his cigarette, and decided to check out the situation himself. The guy who had made the call quickly returned to his 3 friends, who were sitting on a bench. All of them seemed upset and sad after being disciplined. They even thought it was a bit unfair to have been caught in a disciplinary act. The only one among them who hadn't faced any consequences told his friends they shouldn't have been bothering the girls. He explained he was only fine because one of the girls had kicked him. The guy who had caused all of this then called him a coward for running away. The instigator then asked why Vinny and Sung had been called at a time like that. He added that it was embarrassing if everyone found out the 3 of them had been disciplined by just one person. Just then, Vinny arrived and ordered the instigator to take his hands off the boy. The guy was so startled that he fell to the ground. Sitting on the ground, the instigator looked up and realized it was Vinny, whose imposing voice had caused him to fall. Vinny wanted to know where the boy in question was, repeatedly asking the instigator on the ground. The boy replied that when he woke up, the person had already left. Vinny then lectured the boy, telling him not to go around saying they were from the same school because it was embarrassing. Sung concluded that the person who had taught them a lesson was just a student. One of the 3 who had also been put in their place said he wasn't sure, but described someone with long hair and a band-aid under their nose. Beyond the long hair and band-aid, they couldn't remember anything else. However, one of them had something more useful. When the boy tried flirting with the girl, one of his friends, thinking it was funny, took a photo. So, they had a picture. They assumed the girl with the bike was his girlfriend. However, the photo quality was quite poor, making it difficult to identify anyone. Sung wanted to know what they could do with the girl's photo. The boy in the photo, who had been rejected by the girl, was irritated to see that someone had taken pictures of him. Vinny, after analyzing the photo and the bike, realized he could use it to find out more. Vinny asked Sung to send him the photo, explaining he had an idea of what to do. With the photo now on his phone, Vinny decided to call an old friend. This friend was training on a treadmill with his bike, aiming to reach higher speeds. When the friend heard the phone ring, he immediately grumbled that he hated being called while training. He momentarily paused his workout, wiped off some sweat, and answered the call. Seeing Vinny's name, he became annoyed. However, Vinny told him to shut up and just look at the photo. Vinny then asked for his friend's attention, explaining that someone on his team might be using that bike. TJ responded that he had never seen anyone on his team using that kind of trail bike. TJ then wanted to know why Vinny was sending him the photo. Vinny explained that he was looking for a guy with long hair and a band-aid under his nose. TJ pondered who it might be. After considering the description of the long hair and the band-aid, only one possibility came to mind. It was the friend of the student council president at Sunny School, and TJ quickly passed that information to Vinny. Vinny became interested upon learning that the guy in question was from Sunny School. TJ, after revealing the guy's identity, was very pleased with himself. The boy was a friend of student council president Jay, whom TJ disliked due to past defeats against him. Slowly, TJ's expression changed, and he began laughing maliciously. Looking at the bike, TJ realized he didn't know what was going on, but he was relieved that Vinny wasn't after him. The next day at school, Dom Kang entered his classroom, engrossed in his phone. His classmate called him Mr. Tough Guy and invited him to train on rollers with their bikes after school. However, Dom Kang had to decline, explaining he had to work that night. Minu seemed visibly upset. Dom Kang, his friend, then offered to train alone later if he could get a break from work. Jay told Minu to stop coming into his classroom. Minu countered, stating the classroom wasn't Jay's. It belonged to everyone in the school and was meant to be shared. Jay replied that he didn't go into other classrooms because he had no reason to. Their classmates were already gossiping that the two were having another couple's quarrel, fueling rumors they believed to be true. Chelly quickly approached Jay and snapped a picture before he noticed. Jay didn't like it and asked what she was doing. She said he was handsome and told him she planned to tell her friends in England that she had found a guy she liked. She explained she needed the picture to convince them he was her boyfriend, then asked if he was okay with it. Jay immediately said no. However, she showed him that she had already posted the selfie of the two on her profile. She showed him the picture again, adding it was a shame because it was already online. Mia was arriving at the classroom, satisfied because she and her friend Yuna had plans to see a movie the next day. Yuna, upon arriving, stared at Dom Kang, who didn't look particularly happy to see her either. The two girls passed by without saying much. Even Dom Kang, who usually seemed pleased when seeing Yuna, wasn't like that this time. Later, to distract himself, Dom said he was tired and would take a nap, precisely to avoid any questions. Minu noticed the tension. Neither Dom nor Yuna was communicating. Mia also noticed, asking Yuna if something had happened between her and Dom. Yuna looked very sad, prompting Mia to ask if they had fought. Clearly upset, Yuna replied, "It's nothing." Looking at Dom, slumped over the table and napping, Yuna added, "We aren't close enough to even fight." Outside, Dom's guard dog was was keeping watch over his bike. When Dom arrived, the dog became very excited, especially when called by name. Dom Kang had named his dog Jordan. He thanked Jordan for being a good bodyguard and watching the bike. Dom told Jordan that he would skip class and go home early. However, as soon as Dom unleashed Jordan, the dog bolted away. Dom had to grab his bike and chase after it. No matter how loudly Dom shouted Jordan's name, the dog wouldn't stop, drawing the attention of many people. Once the commotion was resolved, Dom tied Jordan to his backpack and carried the dog on his back. Everyone stared at Dom, riding his bike with a dog that size strapped to his back. Dom Kang told his friend Jordan, "Please don't run away again, it's dangerous and someone could hurt you." At the end of class, everyone was saying their goodbyes. Meanwhile, the three guys from the previous day's incident were watching, hoping to spot someone leaving the school. Since they attended a different school, they waited outside Sunny, hoping to find the boy. However, the boldest of the three didn't find who he was looking for, but he noticed from afar the girl he had tried to flirt with the day before. Yuna was walking with her friend Mia. Yuna looked very downcast, as Dom, who usually cheered her up, had left class early. The troublemaker smiled when he saw Yuna and reported it to his friends. Meanwhile, Mia was trying to talk to Yuna about Dom, noting he was acting differently that day. Mia tried to see if Yuna could explain what had happened, but Yuna simply said it wasn't the first time Dom had skipped class. Yuna told Mia not to worry, assuring her Dom was probably fine. Mia replied that she hoped so. Yuna remained quiet as she walked with Mia until the two were approached by the three guys. One of the guys asked Yuna if she remembered them. Mia, scared, asked Yuna who they were. Meanwhile, at the WD club where Dom worked, he was using some free time to practice his cycling tricks. His bodyguards were timing Dom. Dom was breaking record after record, pulling off amazing tricks in record time. It was clear Dom was taking cycling seriously. He wanted to impress his friends and join a team. That's why Dom was working so hard. He was already getting the hang of the standing maneuver, though he still found it very challenging. That's when Dom's phone rang. He found it odd. Who could be calling him at that hour? Dom took his phone from his pocket to see who it was. It was Mia, and she sounded terrified. Realizing it was Mia, Dom grew alarmed. She was crying, screaming for him to help Yuna. Yuna was being harassed by those boys from the other day, and Mia didn't know what to do. Hearing this, Dom's expression completely changed. Even his bodyguards noticed something was off with him. One of the bodyguards called out, saying it was time, but was startled when Dom just grabbed his bike. Dom sped off at full speed, his face bearing an intense expression. The bullies were pressuring Yuna to give them Dom's phone number. They told Yuna there was no point in trying to protect her boyfriend, because they would eventually find out where Dom was. Yuna told the bullies they had issues, first starting trouble, and now chasing after Dom. Yuna warned them that if they kept this up, she would call the police because they were being a nuisance. One of the guys sarcastically warned Yuna about what would happen the next day if she really called the police. Mia was already very distressed by the situation and wasn't used to dealing with this kind of thing. Quietly, Mia told Yuna that she had already called Dom and that he was probably on his way. Yuna widened her eyes in shock. She didn't want Dom to get into trouble, especially when she saw who was there. Vinny was trouble personified. He hardly seemed like a normal person. Wherever he showed up, chaos followed. And judging by Vinny's look, he was eager for trouble. He must have orchestrated the whole thing just to confront Dom. And now Mia had handed Dom over on a silver platter to those bullies. As soon as Dom's bodyguards saw him leaving at high speed after answering a suspicious phone call, they didn't think twice about chasing Dom, but they got stuck at a traffic light. With them was also Jordan, Dom's loyal dog, who still couldn't understand how Dom could be so fast on that bike. In the meantime, Dom's father called to ask what was happening. They informed Dom's father that after receiving a call, Dom had suddenly dashed off in the direction of his school. Pedaling as fast as he could, Dom reached an incredible speed, even losing his cap along the way. As Dom Kang pedaled, many thoughts raced through his mind. He had to make it in time before anyone did something bad to Yuna. He felt guilty, especially since they hadn't spoken all day, and needed to get there as quickly as possible. Past memories surfaced as he pedaled. He recalled a time when he had a very different look, though his mustache had always defined his personality. He remembered being at work, standing at the door of a club, when he saw a man holding a girl. Dom Kang intervened, asking the man to let her go, but the rude man insisted on grabbing her arm. Another young man approached and told the man he was being disrespectful, adding that his father wouldn't be pleased to know how he was handling things. The man quickly greeted the young man and apologized, promising he wouldn't do it again. The girl briefly glanced at Dom Kang, who was also looking at her. That was the first time he noticed Yuna, and the first time she saw him. On the first day at Sunny School, Dom Kang was still on crutches, seemingly with a broken leg. People whispered about him, saying he must come from a high-ranking family or know someone important. While he was standing and checking his phone, Yuna appeared and asked if he was the mustached guy from the club. That's when they realized they would be in the same class. She asked him how he had the nerve to come to school like that and told him to stop dyeing his hair and start dressing properly. Dom Kang asked her who she thought she was to tell him how to act. Annoyed, She kept staring at him. Dom Kang then stood up and asked her to give him a moment. In secret, he asked her not to tell anyone, neither the students nor the teacher, about what had happened the previous day. He explained it was about his mustache and working at the club, and that it had to remain a secret. Dom Kang asked why she would waste her time saying such things about someone. Glaring at him, Yuna said that if he was so scared, he should start acting like a normal student and stop being a thug. Dom Kang told her to stop bothering him with that useless nonsense, thinking she had serious attitude problems. Dom Kang also saw Mia and Yuna reunite after studying together in elementary school. The two chatted in front of him as if he didn't exist. He thought he should have pretended not to have seen her before. Why did he have to attend the same school as her? There was only a year left until college entrance exams, and they could party like crazy. At least that's what some guys heading toward him were saying. However, when they passed by Dom Kang, they gave him dirty looks and said something nasty about him. He pretended not to hear them, but then they called him back, asking if he was a freshman and how he dared to look at his seniors like that. Dom Kang immediately said he was just looking ahead and couldn't help it if they were there. Being seniors, they weren't going to let a guy with such a hideous appearance confront them. One of them warned Dom Kang that he'd better stop acting like a smart aleck. Dom Kang didn't falter for a second and kept staring at the guy. The guy tried to lunge at him, attempting to land a hook, but Dom Kang simply dodged. However, since Dom Kang was injured, one of them kicked his crutch, causing him to fall to the ground. They then started kicking Dom Kang, asking who he thought he was. They left, saying kids these days didn't know how to be respectful, and warning him not to mess with them again if he wanted to stay intact. Dom Kang was caught off guard at first, but now it was different. He picked up his crutch from the ground. As the two were still bad-mouthing him, talking about putting all the freshmen in their place, Dom Kang appeared behind them. When one of them turned around, it was already too late. The crutch was already near his face, and that's how Dom Kang became an excellent disciplinarian that day. He knocked the two of them down. Mia and her friend happened to be passing by. They were chatting and walking when further ahead, they saw Dom Kang properly educating the boys. The two troublemakers had already been thoroughly disciplined. Yuna, upon seeing Dom Kang with the crutch managing to handle the two on his own, was astonished. Dom Kang was still there, standing near the two who had tried to hurt him, even though he was on crutches with a broken foot. In the principal's office, Dom Kang was receiving a major lecture because it was against the rules for a first-year student to fight with a third-year student. The principal then asked the teachers to return to their classrooms and not stand around chatting, but to keep an eye on the students instead. He also instructed them to ensure no one found out about the incident, as he didn't want the school's reputation to be tarnished. The vice principal was upset because this had to happen while the principal was away on an overseas business trip. He told Dom Kang that his parents were on their way to the school. There was a knock at the door. The secretary came in, notifying them that Dom Kang's father had arrived. The vice principal asked her to let them all in. The secretary, trembling, tried to explain something, but before she could finish, they entered. Dom Kang's father and all his bodyguards walked in, with the father commenting on how pleased he was that the boy was attending such a fine school. Taking off his glasses and appearing even more intimidating, the father asked his son what he had done this time. When Dom Kang's father greeted the vice principal, the latter practically shrank to the point of nearly disappearing. Dom knew he was in big trouble. He realized this situation was about to escalate even further. Later, when Dom walked out unscathed through the hallways, people were left wondering how he hadn't been expelled. After disciplining two students with his crutches, everyone started avoiding him, and some even began to gossip about him behind his back. Dom was frustrated that everyone kept talking about him as if he didn't exist. He found the perfect spot to take a nap, a high and quiet place. Lying down on the floor, exhausted, he started to doze off. He was startled awake when someone told him to get up. Terrified, Dom realized that the person calling him had even given him a kick to speed up the waking process. Annoyed, he asked who the miserable person was that had done that to him. Then he realized it was just the annoying girl who always nagged him. She looked at Dom and asked if he had any idea how much time she had wasted searching for him all over the school. Immediately, Dom asked why she had been looking so hard for him. She told him the teacher had sent her to find him because she wanted to speak with him. Lying back down, Dom said he'd go later, but for now, he wanted to relax a bit more because dealing with teachers gave him a headache. Opening one eye to see if she had left, Dom noticed she was still sitting beside him, fiddling with her phone. She glanced at him and remarked that she felt sorry for him. How could a student dye his hair, work at a club, and still have time to discipline older students? Why didn't he try being a decent student for once? Dom Kang wanted to know why she cared so much and kept bothering him. Now she was even testing his patience. The two of them stayed on the rooftop for quite some time. She asked him what he planned to do after graduation. Dom considered a few things. He only wanted to know why she was asking him that kind of question, especially there of all places. She commented that everyone had things they wanted to do, and assumed he must have something in mind too. Dom then said he liked music. She asked if he meant writing music, composing melodies, or being a singer. He clarified that he didn't know exactly exactly what he wanted to do with music. He just knew he wanted to work in that field. She thought his answer was too vague, considering there were many paths he could take. Dom explained that he felt calm whenever he listened to music, whether at the club or at home. That's when he concluded that he wanted to create good music too. Yuna told him that if he studied music, he could get into a university and earn a good degree. Dom Kang wanted to know if it was really necessary to attend university to study music. Yuna said she didn't think there was any law making it mandatory. However, university was where people went to become specialists in something they wanted to pursue. Dom listened to her as he lit a cigarette. Yuna, however, told him, absolutely not. Dom pulled the tobacco from his mouth. Yuna then added that whatever he did, he should at least not use tobacco at school. Especially there, Yuna told Dom that if he didn't even have a high school diploma, society wouldn't value him. Dom tried to change the subject and asked what she would like to do. Yuna said she didn't know yet. That's when Dom found her response hard to understand. Yuna explained that she studied a lot whenever she could because she wanted to work hard for her younger brother. She didn't really have a long-term goal. Then Dom asked about her brother, and she fell silent. It seemed like something she didn't like to talk about. Yuna then said she was wasting her time there, stood up, and told Dom to start behaving better and go see the teacher. Dom defended himself, saying that the time she wasted was because she kept striking up a conversation. Yuna thought it was nice that Dom had something he wanted to do. She hoped his dreams would come true, and said he would have her full support. Once again, she reminded him to go see the teacher. From that day on, Dom began to see Yuna differently, especially when she said she supported him. He thought that no one in his life had ever wanted to support him before. That's when he felt something in his chest as big as his desire to change. It was almost like a purpose. The next day at school, everyone was shocked by what was happening. They noticed Dom had dyed his hair a different color. The boy had changed. He dyed his hair black, and instead of making a mess, he was now trying to help clean up. Dom noticed someone wasting an eraser just to leave bits on the floor. He told the boy to stop because he was trying to keep the floor clean. Seeing that the boy was ignoring him, Dom peeked at the drawing and the bits of eraser the boy was leaving on the floor. Dom told the boy that if those eraser bits ended up on the floor, the boy himself would have to pick them all up. This left the boy uneasy. Afterward, Dom explained that it made cleaning harder. Dom handed the boy a correction pen that didn't make as much of a mess as the eraser. The boy, startled, said he would use it. Arriving at the classroom, Dom noticed Yuna cleaning the window panes. He saw that she had a lot of willingness to help. That's when he approached her. He took her hand, which held the cloth she was using to clean the window, and told her to let a man handle that job. Yuna looked at him and asked why he was acting so strange. His behavior was frustrating the teachers and administrators even more. They told Dom to come down, warning him it was dangerous. The students also noticed that Dom's actions were becoming more eccentric by the day. He had climbed outside despite his injured leg to clean the window, saving Yuna the effort. However, Dom wasn't even listening to what they were saying. He just wanted to keep cleaning and impress Yuna. Yuna was scared and realized that everything was her fault. After class, the two walked home together. Yuna told Dom she had never seen anyone as extreme as him. Dom said he was exhausted from working so hard at school. Yuna told him he could live a normal life, act normally, and didn't need to go to such extremes. That's when Dom's stomach growled. Yuna asked if he wanted something to eat, offering to buy him a reward for all his hard work. What Dom heard was Yuna asking if he wanted to have dinner with her at her expense. He immediately thought it must be an invitation for a date. While Dom stood there daydreaming, Yuna was already ahead, asking if he wasn't going to follow her. Dom apologized for always being lost in thought and asked Yuna what they were going to eat. As a guy bumped into Dom roughly, Dom apologized, even though the other guy was clearly at fault. Still, the guy wasn't satisfied. He demanded to know what Dom was going to do about his uniform. These guys were clearly TJ's lackeys. Dom Kang asked why that would be his problem. Yuna whispered to Dom not to dare try to teach anyone a lesson, or she would never speak to him again. She took charge of the situation and told the boy they would pay for dry cleaning. The boy said that wasn't enough. He'd need a new uniform, which would cost 300,000 won. Yuna told the boy to give her his account number, and she would send the money immediately. That's when Dom told Yuna to wait, suggesting that instead of money, the lackeys could take his pair of limited edition shoes instead. Dom mentioned how difficult it had been to negotiate that pair of sneakers with the rapper. He explained they were a super rare Jordan V1 series pair, supposedly worn by MJ himself, and they were in men's size. Dom added that they would definitely prefer these over money. One of the guys asked if they were fake, but upon closer inspection, the placement of the pores, the stitching on the back, and the quality of the logo made the sneakers look authentic. Yuna couldn't understand what was so special about a pair of shoes. She truly didn't get boys. The guys found it intriguing and were satisfied. The sneakers were very stylish and would fetch good money if sold online. They tried to use the sneakers as payment to apologize for touching Yuna. Yuna was pleased with Dom, as he resolved everything peacefully. That's when Dom told Yuna he planned to graduate high school without causing more trouble. He said he now had more reasons to leave the clan. Yuna Yuna responded that it was good and that she'd buy him anything he wanted to eat. Dom said he wanted to eat chicken, but then he grabbed his phone and messaged his bodyguards, informing them about what had happened. Upon hearing this, Dom's bodyguards quickly dealt with the boy carrying Dom Kang's sneakers. The guys were walking away, joking that they should mess with more losers to get things like they did that day. However, around the corner stood Dom Kang's bodyguards. Just seeing them made the boys freeze in fear. The bodyguards demanded the sneakers back, warning that nothing bad would happen if the boys complied. After the boys handed over the sneakers, some commotion and noise ensued. A short while later, the boys were found tied to a tree by their heads, crying, probably from sheer emotion. Dom Kang, pedaling away, thought he had broken the promise he made to Yuna a long time ago. He pedaled as fast as he could, passing Minu and Jay along the way. However, Dom didn't even notice Minu and Jay, as he was in too much of a hurry to handle the situation. Minu, noticing Dom, found it odd and wondered where he was going with such urgency.